Good afternoon, all. Rookman Kankadi, good afternoon. Slimy Show. Slimy Show, you have a canalist. But I late. I'm actually early today because I don't intend to be that long because it's Father's Day and I have some um, events to attend to. Out there, good afternoon, Margaret Thomas. Um, oh, Lord. So, good afternoon to all and the live and Father's Day greetings, of course, to all of my listeners who are fathers. Terence Cummings, greetings to you, sir. Jamun Alemu, good afternoon to you. Sarah Richards, Rondon Peer. Yes, so Father's Day greetings, of course, to all of the fathers who are um, tuned in to Facts Are Stubborn Things. And we trust that your children and your better halves, and even those of you who don't have a better half, if you want to call them that your day has been well spent so far. Deborah Duranti says we're not working out today. Jeremy Lewis, Slimy Show said Father's Day greetings to everybody except Philip. Yeah, that deadbeat. Not paying his dues, taking care of well, one child in particular. He seems to have favoritism, so one particular child he seems not to be minded to support. Of course, I'm seeing stuff on Facebook that suggests that the Prado is still in hiding. That which he gives priority to, $1 million Prado, instead of taking care of his son. Well, so be it if that is the case. Terrence is saying they asked me for money to buy my own gift. Nah, man, say it ain't so. Say it ain't so. Yes, like he's a wicked man. What example is he setting for his son? No less. One son disowned you, right? And drop your last name. Well, now we take it back because he's a minister and there seems to be perks to be had. But he didn't learn his lesson from that son, right? So you have another one, and the same thing. But if in the future this young man, becomes a success, you'd be quick to jump out himself to say, "That's my son," and want to lay claim. Rock so with that. Rock so with that. Right, so I said I'm not going to be too long today because I have a couple events to attend, so I will jump straight into it. So we had Labor Day celebrations on Friday, annual Labor Day celebrations in Faizabad, and of course we had all of the hypocritical Labor leaders come out and give their annual speeches. And listening to some of those speeches, you would think that the PNM is still in power, right? Or that some of these Labor leaders didn't get the memo that the election went over a year ago and the UNC won, the coalition of interests of which they are a part, won the election, but they're still campaigning. I listened to Felicia Thomas, the president of the PSA, seeking to go down memory lane to remind those present about what the PNM had said and what the former prime minister said about you could get your pay raise, but it would cost you your jobs. Well, you remember that? Felicia, how many times you repeat that? Okay, we spoke about that during the election. People bought into it. They voted for the UNC. Some people chose not to vote, and we are where we are today. But did he lie? I will ask you that question. Did Dr. Rowley lie when he said that? You could get your pay raise, but it could cost you your job, some of you. Well, we know that over 40,000 people lost their jobs so that you and your membership could get a pay raise, a 10% pay raise. But I always thought the trade union movement is supposed to care about all labor, right? All workers. Solidarity forever. Our union makes us strong, forward ever, backward never. Remember those sayings? But apparently that only applies to certain citizens and certain workers. And that is what happens when the trade union movement decides to capitulate at the counter of expediency, right? When they decide to lock arms with the political directorate in the way that this present crop of trade union leaders have done. And so, because they had been the beneficiaries of handouts, some of them still waiting, or you could talk against the government. So we would have seen the incident in the parliament with Pararat and the technician, the two consummate trade union men, Elder and Kiza, sat down there, looked at that, and said nothing. In fact, Comrade Elder actually sought to defend his boss. And I had to ask him, what are you doing? What's going on with you? You're a trade union man, you're allowing that to happen. I said, what is Pararat going to do with the photo he just took? I don't know. You ask him. Ask him what you going to do with the photo. I'm asking you. You are the trade unionist. You were supposed to have been offended by what happened there, but no. How you could be offended when you're drawing that kind of pay, right? As a minister in the Ministerial, right? Over $70,000, $75,000 a month. Their money has a strange way of causing people to see and look at things differently. Yeah. But all you're doing in Faizabad, did you spare a thought for the parliamentary staff, Mr. Elder, while you were sitting in the company of Leroy Batiste and Comrade Keza, along with Comrade Munilal and Comrade Roger and the others? Did you spare a thought? Were there any parliamentary staff there present? Did they come out to solidarity with the trade union movement? I highly doubt that. Because since that incident, I have had occasion to speak to a couple members of staff, and I could tell you the staff is very, very disenchanted, disillusioned by what has taken place. One person that I spoke to told me they've been a member of parliament, a member of staff for the parliament for over 18 years. And what is taking place now is unprecedented. That you have, yes, you have UNC supporters, PNM supporters, you have persons who are non-aligned, but at the end of the day, when it comes to doing their jobs, they try to be as professional as possible. And I could be honest with you, in the year and some, for almost 14 months that I have been there, I cannot pinpoint, save and except for maybe one or two persons who I may have spoken to. I can't look at a staff member and say, well, he's a PNM, he's UNC, because they don't carry themselves about in that manner. The way they interact with you is very professional. Even if they don't support the PNM, you would never believe that that is the case. So when the Prime Minister could come and make that statement that his staff are biased and under the current management of the Parliament in both houses, pathetic. So that was just a farce that took place there on Friday down in Faizabad. As I saw many comments on Facebook on the posts where Roger went to lay a wreath at the grave of Uriah Buzz Butler. People were saying Butler should have get up and slap him or grab him by his pinky toe or pull him in the grave for his hypocrisy. They are all in with this government. And this government knows very well how to buy people. The best way to silence the opposition, not us, is to just buy them out. So they already have Felicia tied up like a market crab. So coming to talk about all you remember, that's the best speech you could have come up with, Felicia. Meanwhile, you and the CPO Rango Tango in. They tell you 60-40. And you say, nah, we want 80 cash and take 20 non-cash. And the Minister of Finance already come out and said, well, hey, this is what it is. Take it or leave it, basically. But you're there arm in arm because when you're sitting on a state board and collecting director's fee every month for one meeting for the month, no biggie. When you're driving around in BMW and drawing big salary from PSA, you cannot hope to understand what these folks are going through, right? What these people are going through. And then Leroy Batiste, the backdoor president, PSA president, had the effrontery to come to the lower house on Tuesday and make a complete ARSE of himself, right? Want to presume to lecture us on the opposition bench. Like he forget he's a guest in our house, right? You are a guest there, but come to gallery yourself. Like it's a long time he wanted to do that and he get the opportunity finally to do it. And we just sitting there and I'm just looking at this clown talking about we care about the oil field workers, sounding like if it is somebody was inserting something in his rectum. This clown stand up there like a fool, gallery and all of that. Of course, we know just a theatrical presentation to impress the Prime Minister. The poor elder. And the Prime Minister got up to speak, she praised Keza and she praised Batiste, but she forget he. No mention of him, right? But you want to come in the lower house and gallery yourself. Talking nonsense about how the PNM treated the workers, the former Petrotrin workers. What they came to do there on Thursday was basically to pass a law to enable the OWTU, once the refineries reopened, so that they could get back their membership and start back to collect the desperately needed money because of all the money that they spent in their failed attempt to get the refinery, right? And now they're in debt, up to their neck, they're drowning in debt, and they desperately need money. Where does that the quickest place for that money to come from? Well, your membership. And since with the restructuring of Petrotrin, they would have lost some of that membership, obviously, because persons would have gone home. But it seems that those persons who were rehired under the new companies of Paria, Heritage, and Guaracara, that it was not a seamless transition in terms of union representation. So, Batiste, in concert with Roger and Kamla and whoever else in this government, decided, well, hey, don't worry, we'll fix that for you all, because that matter, as we understand, is in the court. And as Stuart Chung would have mentioned, that the reason why the matter continues to drag on in the court is because the OWTU continues to have the matter adjourned in anticipation of what it is took place on Thursday. So they find the court isn't looking too good. So you know what? Let us go the other route. We'll do it through an act of parliament and allow the government to fix the mischief or the wrong that the PNM would have done. But I just want to ask Roger, and I want to ask this government something. Munilal boasting that he and the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, that they will require new doors very soon because the amount of people that knocking down their doors and pounding down their doors, wanting to invest in Trinidad and Tobago, right? They just can't seem to get rid of them. They don't know how to get rid of all of these people. There's so many people just lining up now to come and invest in Trinidad and Tobago. But interestingly, as I said before, nobody lining up. Nobody mentioned anybody lining up outside the door of the Minister of Works and Infrastructure. This great, grandiose national revitalization plan, where they said they got 965 expressions of interest and contracts were supposed to have been signed between last month and this month. Well, June is almost finished. We have not heard UDCOT say they sign off on any MOU, any agreement, any contract with anybody who expressed interest in one of the 129 projects under this National Revitalization Program initiative. If anybody's should have needed a door replaced, it should have been Julian John. But you realize you ain't hearing nothing about that National Revitalization Program again, right? Ain't nothing. All this hot and sweaty, they travel all over the world, spend taxpayers' money, eat our food, drink our juice, belch, and yet still, here we are. But I want to ask them, if and whenever this refinery reopens, the 5,000 workers that you all are crying and shedding crocodile tears for who lost their jobs, will this new dispensation, will you all rehire 5,000? Will you all hire 5,000 persons? Because you're saying basically what they say now, the PNM is saying how much workers and the wage bill was so high and that was bringing down the company. Okay, so I am asking you, if and when the refineries reopen, do you intend to hire the same amount of staff? Tell us that. Right, that's what we want to know. Since it wasn't overstaffed before, so it stands to reason that you would need at least 5,000 persons. Meanwhile, we have the largest oil refinery in the world, the Jamnagar oil refinery in India, but that is refining about 1.2 million barrels of oil per day with a staff of just about 2,700. But we, in Trinidad and Tobago, our refinery was refining only 10% of that, about 120,000 barrels of oil per day. And we had double the staff of the Jamnagar oil refinery. So I just waiting to see if you all will hire 5,000 workers should you reopen the refinery whenever. And then we would have heard Mr. Minister of Finance talking about, well, the opposition, come, what they're going to do next year, come the end of next year, they're going to be sick. They're going to need to go in the hospital, they need medication because they will be sick when they see what coming. What is coming? So it is clear what the plan is. They figure, and money start to run from the energy projects, that you're going to what? Spend money like mad, like crazy, and all will be forgiven, all will be forgotten, right? Yeah, when we see all the things, all they plan to do. But I just want to remind Minister of Finance, tax school, that between 2010 to 2015, you all spent a lot of money. Highest energy revenues in the country's history. You all spent money like that, and you still lost the election. Still lost. So if you plan to come back with the same thing, understand, the population has already grown weary of this government, right? Yeah, you still have your UNC sycophants who will hold on no matter what, regardless of what you all do, and they will still hold on. I mean, you all could do them what you want. Kamala could stand up on a platform and tell them they're the biggest idiots, that they fully dunce, and they will still support her. Yeah, they say it's not her, it's her advisors. It's who advising her. Always the advisors. And then she'll come around and say, oh, this is me. This is all me. No, it's the advisors. Everything is the advisors, because they, cognitive dissonance. When it is that you've held on to a belief for so long, for 10 years, they believe, yes, PNM was the enemy, and the PNM was the worst, and the PNM was oppressing people and suffering poor people, and only the 1% was benefiting under the PNM. And we need Kamala to come back. She was the best prime minister. She gave out laptops. And she had baby grant. And she had life support and all of these things. Yes, life was better under Kamala. And Kamala has come back and made your lives even worse. And you can't accept that. Because to accept that means you need to admit that you were wrong insofar as your criticisms of the PNM was concerned. And you can't do that. So we keep in faith, no matter what she does. Everything is right. Everything good. Everything good. But let me remind Mr. Roger, and you see the hypocrisy of these people. So they had plenty to say about the PNM and what the PNM did, and according to Kamala, the PNM betrayed the oil field, the oil workers, and they suffered the oil workers. But her government is here to rescue them. Fear not. They love the oil field trade union workers. They love that. Love them, always did. Let's put that to the test. I'm reading here. Let me get this article. Where is it? Where is it? No, not that one. So many things I try to see. Daily Express, dated in 13th of November 2020. Kamala tried to harm OWTU's bid. I wonder if Mr. Roger remembers that. The same Passad Bisasa who you hug up with, who you're now arm in arm with, locked arm in arm. And you love this government. This is the best. This is the most labor-friendly government there has ever been. Opposition leader Kamala Passad Bisasa attempted to harm the oilfield workers' trade union's bid through Patriotic Energies and Technologies to acquire the assets of the former Petrotrin refinery. But she failed. This is Roger speaking here. As he blasted Passad Bisasa over a statement she made this week on Patriotic's proposal to own and restart the refinery at Pointe-à-Pitre, OWTU President General Ansel Roger said there was an attempt by the opposition leader to cause great injury to the acquisition process. In a UNC virtual meeting on Monday, Passad Bisasa raised questions about Patriotic's bid for the assets of the former state oil company and its proposed financing arrangements through Trafigura. Yes, another name that featured prominently over the course of the last week in the parliament. One of the world's largest commodities traders. Addressing reporters at OWTU San Fernando headquarters yesterday, Roger said, "We want to condemn in the strongest possible terms, outright, all of those assertions made by the honorable leader of the opposition in her campaign to deny us, the OWTU, an opportunity to protect our legacy and to advance Trinidad and Tobago and to advance the concerns and the well-being of the small man who today is left wanting." He said the records would show that the UNC was always against the OWTU and Patriotic acquiring the refinery, making it clear that if they had won the general election, they were going to cancel the acquisition process. Ansel, come to the front of the class, Ansel. You remember that? Or was that Photoshop? You know, like the room 201, PNM Voodoo, PNM Photoshop? When the announcement was made on October 31st that Patriotic will no longer be a part of this acquisition process and that our proposal was denied, what in fact that did, while it brought sorrow and pain and agony, not just to the OWTU and its members, but to the hundreds and thousands of persons in Trinidad and Tobago, it brought joy to the heart of the honorable leader of the opposition. I also wish to remind everyone that it was only in October last year, two prominent individuals from the UNC went to the High Court and filed an injunction to stop the process, while at the same time they portrayed they were supporting the Petrotrin workers. Is this a repeat, Roger? Are they pretending now to support you all? Obsession with Trafigura. Addressing the Trafigura matter, Roger said there seemed to be some obsession and sustained campaign against Trafigura with a narrative that the company is a notorious trader and there was some conspiracy with OWTU and Trafigura, where the company came to Trinidad and Tobago under the pretext of assisting OWTU, but really wanted to gain assets of the country. Roger went on to say, my point this afternoon is that she ought to have known indeed, if she did not know, that we're in deep trouble because it was likened to sunshine can kill COVID. Two revenue streams coming to the country when the now leader of the opposition was then Prime Minister. The cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago must have known where these two major revenue streams came from. The former Prime Minister ought to know. Her Minister of Energy then ought to have known. Now you all recall when the former administration would have given first preference for the refinery to the OWTU. First they said, no, we don't want that. Don't shut down the refinery. We don't want it. Thanks, but no thanks. And then they came and they changed their mind and they came up with a proposal. And they went all over the country, meeting with this one, with the Chamber of Commerce, meeting with whoever and whoever. And they had a meeting with the then opposition, led by Kamala Persad-Bissessar. She and a team met with a team comprising Roger and his people. And they sat down in a room to discuss the OWTU's proposal to bid for the refinery and the refinery alone. But when they left that meeting, Roger, who was interviewed by the media, indicated that Persad-Bissessar and her team had advised them or recommended that they not just bid for the refinery alone, but they go for the whole hog. Bid for everything, the non-core assets as well, which is not up for sale. Bid for that too. And they went back and revised their proposal and came forward with a bid for all of the assets, the refinery and everything as the whole company. So you sat with these people around that table and you all held discussions and you tell them, oh yes, this is such a wonderful proposal. I think it's a great idea. But don't just bid for the refinery alone, bid for everything. I think you all have what it takes. You didn't ask them then, well, where the money coming from? No concerns were raised. Where the money coming from? How are you all going to be able to purchase the refinery? She didn't ask that because she knew what the plan was. You figure if you convince them to bid for the whole company, that the government would not take them seriously. They say, well, we offer you all refinery, well, they come to bid for everything. You're not serious. You can't afford that. Forget that. This is not a serious bid, and dismiss them. But the government went through the process. They said, listen, we received your bid, but the non-core assets are not for sale. All we are offering you is the refinery. All right? And we are prepared to work with you. Yes, you've given us a proposal to purchase, I think it was 750 million US or so they had offered upfront. The government said, listen, we do not wish for you all to go into debt so early to purchase the refinery. And then when you acquire the refinery and you start operations, that you are laden with debt, and that could threaten the survival of that whole arrangement. So you know what? We will give you a 3-year moratorium, in which time you could restart the refinery, make some money, pay off whatever little debts you might have incurred to, in the restart process. And at the end of that 3-year moratorium, then you could start to pay us, and we will give you a further, I think it was 8 years or so to pay us. So don't pay us all this money up front. We want to work with you because once you get operations off the ground and you are able to produce the refined fuels, we will then stop importing and then we will take fuel from you. Because if you have fuel to sell and we want you to succeed and we're looking for fuel and energy security, then there's no need for us to purchase outside when that money could be coming to you. So sort yourself out. Take your 3-year moratorium, handle all of your teething problems, get everything in place, and then afterwards you could start to pay us over an 8-year period. UNC didn't support that. Kamala came with her 10 questions. Where they get any money from? Where they get the expertise? Where they going to get the oil from? All of these things she asked. She never asked them that when she met with Roger and his team to discuss the original proposal. None of those questions were asked. But as soon as they get through, because they thought they wouldn't have gotten through, as soon as they get through, tongue change. And she had all these questions and she was no longer in support of it. But as Mr. Warner used to say, yesterday was yesterday and today is today. Bygones be bygones. So as Watson Duke used to say, let us put aside our differences. Let us smoke the, smoke from the, drink the healing bush and smoke the peace pipe. All is forgotten. Roger forgot about all of that. By his own words, that Prasad Bisesa betrayed them. But today, that's not a problem. He goes on to say, there was an attempt by the honorable leader of the opposition to spread misinformation and misleading the country by saying that the original request for proposal, which we placed our bid for, did not include Paria Fuel Trading Company. And therefore, we are now coming from behind to try to put in a bid to acquire Paria. Roger said with the refinery in operation, it was necessary to have both refinery and a port. Thus, their bid would have been for the refinery, now identified as Guaracara, and the port, now identified as Paria. He said it is a matter of public record that their bid was for both the refinery and the port, and it was an act of treachery for someone who had knowledge to the contrary to peddle this. Let me repeat that. He said it is a matter of public record that their bid, Patriotic, was for both refinery and port, and it was an act of treachery for someone who had knowledge to the contrary to peddle this, because she recommended it. He added that Patriotic's bid was announced in the Parliament, and Prasad Bisesa was present when the announcement was made. Attempt to cause hurt. On Monday, Prasad Bisesa said that Patriotic had reduced its original bid of US 700 million to US 500 million, and that the government was now willing to accept less money for the refinery. However, Roger explained the change in Patriotic's offer. Our new proposal would have taken into account the offer made by the Minister of Finance. We would have responded to that, except to say that we are now paying upfront for what we would have taken 13 years to pay, a 3-year moratorium and 10 years to pay, right? So it was 10 years. And the net present value, what that would value in 13 years down the road is what our offer would have worked out to in today's value. The goodly leader of the opposition gave Patriotic the thumbs down and make it look like we want to have a steal of a deal because they offered US 700 million and now they're offering less. They offer US 500 million. What took place? There was an attempt to cause great injury and harm to the acquisition process to ensure that those assets are not acquired on behalf of our people of Trinidad and Tobago. Roger said Prasad Bisesa's pronouncements were meant to be a fatal blow to ensure that the small man, we heard that term used a lot in the Parliament last week, the small man did not rise to economic prominence in the country, and it represented a thin-veiled approach to hide the real intention to hold the process. He said after calling for an independent valuation committee to review their proposal, and the announcement was made that Patriotic was still in the game, and they now afforded an opportunity to present before the committee the full extent of their proposal, that would have angered and infuriated the person who would have had joy had they not gotten to go ahead with the acquisition process. That's Prasad Bisesa talking about. And this was just November 13, 2020, less than 6 years ago. This happened. But today, he is Kamala's biggest defender, singing her praises. Why? Because everybody's still looking for a piece of the pie. And this is a government that has shown that they are willing to bribe anybody to get on your side. Well, kudos to the unions who have said, listen, we're not in line with any UNC government. We're not part of any coalition of interest, and we continue to remain so. We will continue to agitate for our membership. So then you had Mr. Taxco, who came last week to talk about, well, don't worry, we are assuring the unions. We'll take care of it in October, sorry. for the next budget. Don't worry. Relax. We went from better days are coming, better days ahead, to better days are here. In the space of 1 month, a month and a half, you move from better days are ahead to better days are here, better days reach. So them better days was riding a bullet train. Either that or they on steroids. What better days? For whom? For whom? But he's coming to Parliament to talk about the CSO, and the CSO say, and the CSO, not me, you know, the CSO said 8,000 jobs were created, and under the PNM X amount of jobs were lost, and under the over the course of the 10 years. Mr. Baptiste, we want, when you come in with your figures, we have already established that your government, the government of which you are a part, has a credibility issue, especially when you are like to quote figures and quote sources. As I had to point out to them, well, they come talking about Moody's and Moody's and Moody's say and Moody's say. This is the same Moody's that NGC took a decision to part ways with. NGC said, listen, we don't support Moody's evaluation methodology. We don't support their rating methodology, and therefore, we don't want nothing to do with them. So henceforth, we are parting ways with them. We will rely on Fitch, and we will rely on S&P and others, but we don't want anything to do with Moody's. Now, I didn't hear the Minister of Finance as corporation sole. I didn't hear anybody from the cabinet, the Prime Minister, nobody from the government say that they object to that decision by NGC to part ways with Moody's. So if you didn't object, then it means that you support. You endorse the decision by NGC to part ways, and not just the decision, the reason or the rationale given for parting ways. So if NGC says that Moody's rating methodology is flawed, and the government says, well, okay, well, all right, we agree, we hear that. So go ahead and part ways. You have our full support. And they parted ways. How can you now come in the Parliament to quote Moody's to say, well, the economy doing good because Moody's say, and Moody's improve the rating from negative to stable? The same Moody's, you can't be half pregnant. It can't be that their rating's good for the government, but it's not good for a state agency. Make up your mind. So we are not fooled by that nonsense. But when you come to quote CSO statistics, the CSO said, this is the same CSO that when the government now in opposition had issues with, they were not in support of the information coming out from the CSO. They questioned CSO data. In fact, one of their former members, the former member of Parliament from Mayaro, before he was labeled a dissident and exiled to the deepest, darkest recesses of the political cemetery, wrote a whole epistle in the Express newspapers chastising and criticizing the legitimacy of CSO data. But now, today, oh yes, anything that comes out from the CSO's office is gospel. We could believe that. You could take that to the bank. The hypocrisy of this government. But when you come to quote and tell us the CSO say 8,000 and how many jobs, and the population asking which part, where, that's what we want to know. Don't give us, as Fitzgerald Hines would say, you give us half the story and chinks in with the rest. We want to know in which sectors were these jobs created. There's 8,000 jobs. Which sectors? How many jobs? Was it in the energy sector? Was it in the manufacturing sector? Was it in the tourism sector, the hospitality sector? Which sectors? Tell us exactly which sectors and how many jobs were created in each of those sectors to make up this so-called 8,000 that you're telling us about, so that we could now go and interrogate for ourselves. Because the reality on the ground speaks a different story. When it is that you pick up the newspapers or you open some social media platform and you're seeing notices, some companies indicating closing down sale, going out of business, regret to inform that we will be closing our doors at the end of the month. When we're seeing things like that, when you go to the mall today and you see a store, and then 3 days later you go back and you see the storefront covered in brown paper. That is the reality. Even new malls, Eastgate Mall, the newest kid on the block, has already started to see closures of stores. Can't survive. Why? Because the economy is flat. People aren't spending money. And people aren't spending money for two reasons in the main. One, because persons are losing jobs. Aside from the CPAP and the URP and the forestry, Persons are losing their jobs in the private sector because businesses are closing down, because of the fall off in business, the stagnant economy, and companies are not making profits as they used to before. So they are letting go staff, they are downsizing, they're closing down branches, right? But in addition to that, stores are closing and we are seeing a fall off in expenditure because people are afraid to spend their money. They're afraid because they're not sure if come next month they will have a job. They're not sure if 6 months from now they will have a job. Persons in the public sector are seeing some of their colleagues who they've worked with for years, notwithstanding that the fact that these persons have been working under contract, renewed contract every 3 years. Some people have been there for 6 years, 9 years under contract. And this government came in and what they do? Shutting down departments, making jobs redundant, not renewing contracts. People who had 3-year contracts that was renewed just before this government came into office and telling themselves that at least I have another 2 years, only to hear, well, we're shutting down this department, right? And we don't have any positions right now to be able to send anybody elsewhere. So we will have to part ways and you will get whatever gratuity or so on that is owed to you. But we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. That is the reality. That is what is happening. So when they come to boast how much thousands of jobs created, don't stop there. Tell us how many jobs were lost. The CSO doesn't compile that data. The only data they compile is how many jobs were created. Tell us how many jobs were lost so that we can match it up. Because if the number of jobs lost equates to the number of jobs created, or is more than the number of jobs lost, then all they're playing smart with foolishness. But they don't ever mention how many jobs lost, Every time we and the opposition quote a figure, all they will say, they're exaggerating, that is not true, it's fearmongering, it's not so many. The best way to debunk what we say is to tell us, give us the exact figures, come and stand up in the parliament with a document and say, this is how many CPEP workers were fired, there's so many URP workers, how many forestry workers, there's so many people were fired in the public service, how many contracts were not renewed. Tell us these things. But we're not hearing that. You know what else they're not talking about? They had their recruitment drive, employee TT. They said they had over 20,000 jobs, vacancies in the public service. 110,000 plus people applied. Yet still, to date, this was since last year, I think it was October or so, last year, to date, almost 9 months later, we are still waiting to hear some minister come and say, well, out of the 20,000 vacancies, 15,000 have been filled. 10,000 have been filled. This is your personal data. You don't need to rely on CSO for that. Ask each ministry, how many vacancies did you fill? How many did you fill? How many did you fill? Compile and come in the parliament and boast. But they can't do that because up until 2 or 3 months ago, they were telling us 1,800 persons were hired under the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure. And that was it. In that private motion that I think Kareem brought, no other minister come to say, other than Padarat, come to talk for Jolene ministry. But made mention not even of his own ministry to say, well, the Ministry of Public Utilities hired X amount. He told us 1,806 persons were hired under the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure to do what? Little menial work. Clean and drain and whatnot and so on. And that's about it. But what about all the other positions in the other ministries? What's going on with that? Well, we know why he didn't make mention of his own ministry, because they were busy hiring social media personalities in WASA. They were busy hiring social media personalities on state media, 91.1 and TTT Limited. WASA hired 500 and some odd workers. How? What was the basis? Did you go through your employee TT recruitment program, or just friends, family, and friends and family of financiers? Because I am being told practically every day, names just come in, hire this one, hire that one. And not just in WASA, in TNTech I am hearing that is also taking place. And other state enterprises, I'm hearing stuff happening in TSTT and other places. This is what is on the ground. Let's just come and hire this one, hire that one. And the people who are desperately in need of work, well, they don't know anybody. So hard luck for you. So this whole Labor Day celebration was just a whole sham, right? They're just following tradition. You had to go down to Faizabad, you march, you lay a read by Butler Tomb, Right? You sing some songs, solidarity forever, our union makes us strong, and so on. Then you go and you give your speeches, and afterwards, everybody open the car trunk and you drink whatever is your gazoo of choice. Until next year. Right? And so the whole shenanigans starts all over again until next year. Well, we saw young Alyssa Phillip and her mother were arrested. Again, this time, before I go there was another point that I needed to raise quickly with respect to Patriotic and Roger and why this whole coalition of interest is nothing but a brotherhood of wrongdoers, upholders of wrongdoing. We would recall that during the last bidding process for the refinery, when Scotiabank was evaluating the proposals and so on, that it was revealed by then Minister of Energy Stuart Young that Patriotic allegedly would have proffered a fraudulent document purporting to be a receipt for a wire transfer in the amount of 1.5 billion US dollars into the accounts of Patriotic to be able to allow them to purchase the assets of the refinery and so on. And what Stuart Young would have revealed was that this so-called wire transfer receipt was a fraudulent document, that no such wire transfer took place, no such wire transfer existed. And when questions were put to Mr. Roger and other officials of Patriotic Energies, they dance around it and split around it and say, well, it's a misunderstanding and it's not. Did the police ever launch an investigation into that matter? What I do recall at the time is that the then opposition, now government, that the only comment they had with respect to that development wasn't concerns about this whole thing and whether or not the same OWTU who they were questioning where they were going to get the money from to be able to purchase the refinery, there were no concerns raised from Munilal and the UNC and so on in respect of that matter and called for police investigation. These people who so wanted police investigation into fake oil probably closed down the refinery because he wanted to protect his friend, the owner of AB Drilling. I recall the only concern Munilal had in respect to that revelation by Stuart Young wasn't the validity of it, it was how he get it. If it is that the whole process and the evaluation process was supposed to be an independent thing by Scotia or whoever it is, how it is TPHL and how it is Stuart Young come to be in receipt of that information. Today, they are in the government. Lockstep, locked arm in arm with someone who stands accused of that, a potential crime. But as I said before, it's a brotherhood of wrongdoers. So they don't care about that. Because when you're just as crooked and unprincipled as they are, well, birds of a feather. See them, yes. Everybody arm in arm, walking up the road in Faizabad on Friday. Bunch of hypocrites, crooks in suits. But anyway, so I was making the point about young Alyssa and her mother who were arrested. Let me see. Let me get it here. The article in today's newspaper, what she and her mother were charged with. Alyssa and mom on 3 charges each. Now recall the last time when they were arrested the other day, she claimed, so she said, is that when she was in the station, they were told by the police, well, listen, we could have we're going easier in here because you could have got a PDO, a preventative detention order, and you could have found yourself under lockup for the rest of the SOE. But we give you a blight, so behave yourself. All right. Social activist Alyssa Phillip and her mother Camille Carrasquero have each been charged with 3 offenses following their arrest during the Labor Day march in Faizabad on Friday. Phillip was charged with, here it is, leading a march and failing to call on participants to disperse, disorderly behavior, and resisting arrest. So we will start with the last one first. In order for you to be charged with resisting arrest, it must mean that there is an attempt to arrest you. Why was she being arrested? For what reason? Leading a march? and failing to call on participants to disperse. Disorderly behavior, well, based on the video footage we have seen, there was no disorderly behavior. But what does the police define as disorderly behavior? What do you define as disorderly behavior? We have since learned that the young lady's presence there was because she was invited. So when we listen to the fully duns posting on Facebook and asking what she was doing there, which trade union is she a part of, which trade union she representing, well, we now hear Michael Anizet would have said and stated that he invited her. So apparently there's a process that if you want to participate in the Labor Day procession, that you're supposed to apply to the police for permission to do so. So is it that the union, the trade union movement would have applied as an umbrella body for all the unions, or is it that each union had to apply individually to the TTPS? That is what I am unclear about. And if each union or each group that was there to march had to apply individually, and the young lady was invited by Michael Anizet, as he stated, then did he inform her that she needed to apply? Did he ask her, well, okay, are you coming alone or will you be coming with people? He must have figured, well, okay, she's not going to come alone because she's leading a movement. And if this is an opportunity and a platform by which she can highlight what her plight is, that she would not come alone. So did you inform her that, hey, you need to apply to the police for permission when he invited her? And if that permission was not required and the umbrella body of the trade union movement would have applied to the TTPS and got permission, then she would not have needed any such individual permission. So this charge of leading a march and failing to call on the participants to disperse is confusing me. She was invited for the benefit of the fully duns. There is video footage in which you see Mr. Anizet speaking to the Deputy Commissioner of Police, Suzette Martin, and informing her that he invited Alyssa Phillip there. So it appears the young lady had no intention of coming down there, but she got a call and said, hey, girl, come down and highlight your plight. And she came down there with her supporters, and now she is the subject of 3 charges in addition to whatever charges she would have had before. Is the trade union movement going to pick up the legal bill, the lawyer fees that she has to pay to fight these charges? Is it simply because she was arrested because the government is uncomfortable with what she is doing and her messaging and so on? Is it TTPS is uncomfortable? I just ask it. Casquero was charged with being present at a march. Casquero was charged with being present at a march. So is it that in order to be present at the march, you needed police permission as well? So then it means the police was supposed to lock up everybody who was at that march. Being present at a march and failing to disperse. Disorderly behavior and resisting arrest. Phillip and Casquero have been at the forefront of the public demonstrations and vigils calling for justice and transparency, following the decision to charge Kaya Seeley with manslaughter and firearms-related offenses in connection with the death of her husband, Joshua Samuel. It is the second time Phillip and her mother have been arrested in connection with such protests. They are currently on bail on separate charges arising from a protest near the office of the DPP. Earlier this month, they appeared before Magistrate Indira Ramnarayan Misir Gosain and pleaded not guilty to charges stemming from the demonstration along Richmond Street. In a release titled TTPS Reaffirms the Rule of Law during Labor Day procession, the police service addressed public commentary surrounding the latest arrests. Commissioner of Police Alistair Guevara said the TTPS respected citizens' right to assemble and express their views, but stressed that those rights must be exercised within the law. He said officers acted professionally and with clarity. It is regrettable that enforcement became necessary, but the sanctity of the Labor Day procession should never be compromised by persons seeking to attach unrelated agendas to a permitted national event. Oh, persons seeking to attach unrelated agendas to a permitted national event. So apparently is there a law, Commissioner Guevara, that says that if you're part of the Labor Day procession, the Labor Day march, that you could only come down there and you must only be treating with issues related to labor? Nothing else? Could you point us to where in the law states that? that says you can't come down with a placard, even if you're a one-man protester and you're coming down with a placard to say, hey, this is my issue. Can't do that. So you listen to her speech and realize, well, it had nothing to do with, well, based on what I heard, there was some relation to labor matters. But is it that after listening to her speech, you say, hey, nah, that is not that's not labor. Yeah, bring the Maria. She going down. As they like to say, you lock up. That's how it went. According to the TTPS, officers acted in keeping with their responsibility to maintain public order, ensure public safety, and protect the integrity of the annual Labor Day procession under the Summary Offences Act. The police service said the trade union movement had applied for and received the necessary permission to stage its annual labor procession in accordance with sections 112, 13, and 14 of the Act. Under the legislation, no person may organize, lead, or participate in a public march without a permit issued by the Commissioner of Police, while applications must be made in writing within the prescribed time frame. Section 112 says no person may organize, lead, or take part in any public march unless a permit has been issued by the Commissioner of Police. Did you tell Mr. Anizet that? Mr. Anizet has been participating in this exercise for many, many years. So if anybody knows what the procedure is, it should be him. And when he invited the young lady, and I suppose her supporters, to be a part of his union, the union that he represents, confused. Applications must be made in writing within the statutory time frame. Section 114, the commissioner may grant or refuse a permit based on public safety and public order considerations. The trade union movement complied fully with these legal requirements. Their procession was therefore lawful and authorized and protected under the permit issued. Unauthorized procession. The TTPS said Philip and a small group of supporters who were not members of the trade union movement attempted to join the procession. Yeah, but you heard Anizet say he invited them to join his team, his group, which had permission to march. So you were supposed to lock up Anizet, not the young lady. If she was misled, if she believed based on this invitation that she could come and be a part of, Anizet is on public record as saying that he invited her. According to the TTPS, officers subsequently confirmed with organizers that the group was not part of the authorized event. Really? Who confirmed that? Who confirmed that? Clearly, you didn't talk to the right person. Because if the man who invited her is telling DCP Martin, hey, she's with us, we invited her, I invited her, you are now coming to tell us you confirmed with the organizers that the group was not part of the authorized event. Well, when it come up in the court, when the matter comes before the judicial officer, and Mr. Anizet comes and says, well, I don't know where the TTPS get from. I invited her. According to the TTPS, officers informed the group's leader that they were not covered under the trade union's permit and that their participation would constitute a separate public march requiring its own authorization. Police also advised that their actions could jeopardize the lawful holding of the Labor Day procession. And despite this clear explanation, the group proceeded to form and participate in an unauthorized procession at the rear of the lawful march. The leader of the activist group refused to call on the unlawful procession to disperse. Officers therefore acted immediately and lawfully to prevent escalation and protect the integrity of the authorized event. So if she had called on her supporters to disperse and they say, nah, we're not dispersing. We're not dispersing. Then what? So why didn't lock them up too? She could tell them disperse. She could have said it. But if they didn't abide by what she said, then what? So why didn't lock up the rest of the people? Why just her and her mother? The mother wasn't the leader. So why you lock up the mother? TTPS further noted that there is clear and unambiguous prohibition against public marches unless permission is granted, and permission must be sought and granted before a march can lawfully take place. This judgment confirms that any group wishing to participate in a public march must have a permit, and that attaching an unauthorized procession to a lawful one is a breach of the act. Well, then if that is so, then based on what Mr. Anizet has said in public, that he invited them, you need to charge him, not her. Have you questioned Mr. Anizet? But you get the government that you deserve, right? This is a government that seeks to silence protest. Let's see what's the time there. Still have a little bit. So we would have seen on, was it Thursday, the announcement that the HDC has taken a decision to cancel the $3.4 billion housing project involving 11 specially selected contractors, one of whose name features prominently in respect of a number of other government projects, would have received, was supposed to have received a contract for some $1.1 billion. Right? We would have heard claims that some of the companies who would have been successful in receiving packages, that they have no experience whatsoever in construction, but yet still they were successful over persons and entities that have years of experience with respect to housing construction not having gotten through. Now, what is interesting was that when this matter first came to light, having been raised by activist Wendell Eversley and represented by attorney Randall Mitchell, that we had several prominent figures coming out and defending this, saying that everything was above board, there was no issue, right? That the PNM is just making mischief and the PNM is against housing for the poor. And why are they frustrating this process? You had no less than a minister in the ministry itself come on and say everything is above board. When we had NH International, Emily Elias would have challenged, I think, the matter before the OPR, and I think his separate challenge would have been dismissed by the OPR. The same godly minister took to social media to do a whole live, a whole video and tell you, well, look, so, and the 11 complaints raised by this company were dismissed and so on, and everything is above board and the project is to proceed. You had the mouthpieces on social media and the mouthpieces and the now echo chamber for UNC propaganda 91.1 bashing the PNM thing, and there's no corruption in this, and this is just PNM propaganda and the PNM fearmongering, and because they don't want the government to build houses because they figure if the government build houses for the poor people that they wouldn't vote for them and they will vote for all kind of rubbish. Well, now the HDC has decided to take in front before front take them and have cancelled the RFP. Not just that, it is the deception in the post that they put out. It is the deception in the release that they put out this release and try to mask the project by quoting a reference number that the average citizen would know nothing about. You just see this release come out and the HDC says, well, we'll be cancelling RFP or whatever number, so and so and so. And the average citizen don't know what that is, so they just assume, okay. Had it not been for the due diligence of people like Randall Mitchell, who would have done his research and would have found out which project that was and brought it to the attention of the population. Today, the same mouthpieces from 91.1 and the same mouthpieces from social media, the tongue change. Well, you know, if it is this, what this has demonstrated is that the Kamala Persad government is serious about fighting crime, and if there's even a hint of corruption in any project, they will not hesitate one time to bring it to an end. But you all said there was no corruption, not even a hint, not a whiff of corruption, nothing, absolutely nothing was wrong. Everything was above board. The process that was used to select the contractors, all of the contractors were legitimate. Everything was good. There was nothing for the OPR to find. So then why you cancel the project? There's no state funds involved, no government money, no taxpayers' money being used. As the contractors getting and coming with their own financing, so there's nothing to be concerned about. So then why you all cancel it? Why? Share that with us. And why you're now changing your tune? So going from everything is above board, this is just PNM propaganda, to, well, you know, it shows the fortitude of Kamala Persad Bissessa that she's not prepared, this new Persad Bissessa 2.0. She's not prepared to tolerate corruption in any form or fashion. And if there is even a hint or even a suggestion of corruption, that she's prepared to deal with it head on and she will not hesitate. Yet still, the same Prime Minister who, if you say something now within a matter of minutes, she will put out a press release. Within a matter of minutes, she will put out some sort of statement on some social media platform. Today is Sunday. Since Thursday, HDC announced that they canceled this project. Right? And we've not heard a word from the Prime Minister. We read this morning that she has left the country to attend a funeral of some family member abroad, and she's supposed to be back on Wednesday. So she's out of the country, so she can't answer no question. But the media usually reaches out to her via WhatsApp, and she usually responds via the same medium. And as far as I know, being out of the country doesn't mean that you don't have access to WhatsApp. Okay? WhatsApp is universal. So why not the usual haste, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, to respond to the media? Because I'm sure they would have sent you a plethora of questions with respect to this matter. Yet we've not seen you put out a statement as you are often want to do and have been doing over the course of the last almost 14 months. Why the silence? David Lee, who is the substantive minister of housing, has said nothing on this matter, but you have the counterfeit 1%er, right? The wannabe Syrian. He has basically appointed himself the mouthpiece for the Ministry of Housing and come on and put out some doted statement about, that the project is not cancelled and that it just put on pause and that the HTC intends to continue and to push through. And his statement contradicts the statement that the HTC put out. Which one should we believe? Him or the HTC? Because both statements are in conflict. Not a word from the chairman of HTC. Is it Feroz Khan, I think is his name? Nothing from him. So we've heard from one. We have 3 ministers in that ministry, but you hear from one, right? The one who can't seem to put a lid on his lip. The one who for some reason seems that he cannot, as the prime minister advised him, stay in his lane. That he feels that he needs to speak before the substantive minister. So him putting that out now, if David Lee comes to say anything that contradicts what he says, how is that going to look? Did he speak with David Lee before he puts out that? Or is it that he's trying to get David Lee work? Is it trying to show the prime minister, well, look, I'm very proactive. I'm not waiting, because I'm a minister in the ministry, and I think that gives me the authority to put out a statement with or without consultation with the man who earning the highest pay of the 3 ministers, the one who is earning the highest pay. He has said nothing. He has put out nothing. But you jump out yourself. The next one who love to do doubles and coffee. You have a platform. Come and talk about it. It's at PNM, PNM, PNM. PNM, 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 PNM. Or did I mention PNM? No, ain't you like to run out yourself every morning and bump your gum? What are you waiting on? What are you waiting on? That's what you're getting paid for. In the 13 and a half, 14 months that you've been minister, have you ever made us one statement with respect to the portfolio that you hold? How many events, HTC events, have you seen Anil Roberts present at? How many? The only time you see this clown is on doubles and coffee, and when he decides to make a complete idiot of himself in the parliament. Otherwise, you don't see him. In case somebody might pick up some footage of him, with respect to his vice of being a drunk, a rum-cock all over the place. That's about it. So nobody could say for surety, well, okay, I could see Anil Roberts did this in his capacity as minister. You don't see the man anywhere, he don't give a speech, nothing. Events are being held, HTC related, you don't see him. So what does he really do? Other than collect over $70,000 a month. What does he do? But then again, as we say, well, you vote for that. You get you didn't vote. And as a result of that, by default, he is, unfortunately, a member of government. Meanwhile, people catching the royal, he enjoying his pay. I tell you, let's see what's the time there. So jump on just now. No, 1 second. So let me get this here. So Zuku is saying it was cancelled because the PNM OPR raised concerns. It was sole select, but he said he will open the tender. Who is he? Who is he? Who is he? Philip Alexander? Is he the Minister of Housing? Don't come here to tell me nothing about what Philip said. Tell me what David Lee said. Tell me what the Prime Minister, who is the head of the government, has said on this. All right? Philip Alexander is a pleb in the grand scheme of things. So the fact that you can only quote from him and you can't quote from your Prime Minister, who loves to comment on everything. She had a comment to say, she come out and she said, with respect to the matter involving the Parliament staff, I spoke on that before. She had plenty to say on that. When they asked for a comment with respect to Kareem's comments at the PNM meeting, she had things to say about that. Right? Say something about Kareem being brainless and some foolishness. So come here and tell me what the Prime Minister said. Because ultimately she is responsible for, she has overall and overarching responsibility for the cabinet. What did she say? You can't tell me because she has said nothing. And if you don't see that as a disrespect that it is, then something wrong with you. But as I said, you all are upholders, and the upholders are worse than the thieves. You worse than them. The project was kind of come back with the same nonsense again. It is going to be open tender. Why wasn't it open tender in the first place? Tell us that. Because Kyle Taklal Singh, big UNC lawyer, right? And Kamla said the UNC, all the UNC lawyers bright. He went on a radio station, 91.1, and stated the reason why they couldn't use open tender is because you do not have enough qualified persons or qualified entities in Trinidad and Tobago to undertake that project. That is what he said. He gave the example. He said, if this microphone that I'm speaking in front of now, if I'm required to purchase some more of these microphones, and there are only one or two companies that I know could bring in these microphones, why would I go out to open tender just to waste time and waste resources when I know there are only two companies that could bring it in? I will just go to these companies directly. So now you come in to say they're going to open tender, but their mouthpieces are telling you they couldn't do open tender before because you don't have enough qualified contractors in the country to warrant open tender. You see how you all allow the UNC to make you look like idiots and clowns, but that's what happens when you all don't listen. Or rather, when you only listen to one source, the wrong source, right? So you didn't hear didn't hear that interview with Mr. Taklal Singh, but I heard it. So how is Mr. Taklal Singh now going to come to defend what he said based on what you are now telling us is that Philip said they're going to open tender, when they have already dismissed any possibility of open tender because they said you don't have sufficient qualified contractors in the country to justify open tender. But we're going to open tender now. There's something wrong with Tole, yes? And you put it, and he has the audacity to come and put it in capital letters for me, to draw my attention and to draw the attention of the persons on the chat. And now looking like a fool because you're defending something and trying to justify something that the lawyers, the mouthpieces of the UNC say shouldn't, makes no sense. Hey, boy. Jimmy is saying, I wonder if she gone with her doctor, her sister just asking for a friend. The sister who was nurse between 2010 to 2015, on whom hundreds of thousands of dollars was spent so that she could jet set around the world. Right? But now Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar is older. You could see that physically she's just not as capable as she was back then. It seems she doesn't need a nurse this time. Always need a human crutch, a bodyguard. Sometimes you see her working in the parliament and she looking, and this is not me poking any fun or mocking the woman at all. Let me say that. I'm making the point that when I am in the parliament and I see Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar working, there have been times when I thought she was going to topple over because she works with a shuffle. And you see, sometimes she's hasting, she's working hastily so that she could grab onto something, grab onto one of the railings. Even though you see her bodyguards walking close behind her, or a minister or two walking close behind her just in case. But that is unfortunately, that is her current circumstance. But so last week we had also the issue of the secret list. The Prime Minister came to the Parliament to bust mark, right? Understand, take note of this, right? Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar has missed several parliamentary sessions so far for this year. Several parliamentary sessions. In 1 week we had A couple of weeks ago, we had 2 sittings in 1 week. She did not attend either. Right? When we had the finance bill, when we had the standing finance committee, she didn't bother to show up. But she found it necessary to show up in the parliament last week to bust a mark. So she's getting information, because this is information that would have come from TNTech, right? Falls under the Ministry of Public Utilities. So rather than do the job that he's being paid to do, which is to improve the delivery of public utilities in this country, whether it be electricity, water in the main, which people are still struggling for, Minister Parliamentary, it seems, believes that his portfolio is to go and dig up to see what mark you could bust. 14 months later, now let's still trying to bust mark. Right? Not, you can't come in the parliament and give a statement to say, we did this in public utilities, we did that. And the Prime Minister I'm talking about here. No. She made her special effort to come to the parliament to bust a mark. And what was the mark? One, to talk about Keith Scotland and some matter involving TNTech and Flavorite, where Flavorite was owing some monies to TNTech and they were not paying their bill, and then TNTech would have retained the services of Scotland to go after TNTech for them to pay the bill, and legal action, and this wasn't filed and all of that and whatnot and stuff. In fact, when they interviewed Mr. Parliamentary outside of the parliament, he said, stay tuned for the parliament, the Prime Minister is coming to make an explosive statement. So I wanted to know, well, what she coming to talk about? And then she come to bust that mark. So when she was finished with that, she came and she told us about the secret list on which the names of companies and politicians, members of the previous government whose names were on that list. And what was the purpose of that list? Was that these persons ought not to be disconnected if they did not pay their bills, their electricity bills, that they would not be disconnected. Right? And then Dr. Rowley had to come out, whose name was also mentioned on that list. He had to come out and defend himself and say, I don't know anything about no list. I have my bills here to show all that I pay my bill. So don't tell me nothing about. Because we know what Dr. Rowley's salary was. It was about $80,000 or so as Prime Minister, right? For the time that he was there, the 10 years that he was Prime Minister, it was about between $75,000 and $80,000 a month. Unlike Mrs. Prasad Bisessa, who is costing the state additional monies aside from the $87,000 a month that she earns as Prime Minister and the how much ever else that she earns as Member of Parliament. He was living in the diplomatic center, the Prime Minister's residence, diplomatic center, right? So his private home didn't need as much security as Mrs. Prasad Bisessa needs because she lives in her private home. So it's costing you, the taxpayers, more money. Aside from the fact that the largest cabinet in the country's history is also costing you, the taxpayer, a lot more money. Money that could be used to, as UNC would say, pave roads and buy beds in the hospital, which, by the way, I would make mention is still the same problem because I know someone right now who is in the hospital since yesterday and is still in casualty, still hasn't been warded, still hasn't gotten a bed, still in casualty, by the way. The same problem they used to complain about when they were in opposition. The state of the health sector was so terrible, you can't get medication and you can't think and you're waiting hours to get a bed. Same problem exists 14 months later. They opened the Couva Children's Hospital, which, as I always say, is a misnomer because there are more adult beds there than children's beds for children. But what's going on with that hospital? What's going on with that hospital? Because the person is in San Fernando Hospital, right? But he lives in Chabonas. He could have been in, why isn't he in the Couva Hospital? You all made a big thing, spend a set of money in December last year. The rededication and the reopening of the hospital, had big grand affair, spend a set of money on food and drink and the like, big party. And yet still the hospital still isn't open fully. Why? For the same reason the PNM were telling you couldn't get staff. Not just doctors and nurses, for which there's a shortage throughout the health sector, but you needed staff as well to be trained to operate the machinery and all of these different things, right? But so Dr. Rowley had to come out now and say, well, look, I paid my bill. And he could have afforded to pay his bill, not just because of the quantum of his salary, but a lot of his household expenses were being met by the state because he was living, as is required, he was living in the Prime Minister's residence. So you know, go to the grocery and buy food and go to the gas station and stuff because he's being driven in the official vehicles, the PM motorcade, and all of that. So why would he not pay his bill? Hmm? All that money he making, you don't have all that amount of expenses, personal expenses as prime minister. If he travel ever so often, it's because he's on state business, so the government paying for his travels, so he didn't have to spend money on that. So in terms of personal expenditure, it's not to say that Dr. Oli live in this lavish lifestyle that he has to pay for from his salary. All right, he is collecting his salary, so he had no reason to be on any list. Just like every government minister at the time who was earning a decent salary as a minister and as a member of parliament, elected or appointed. So they were making more than enough money that they could pay their bills. And I don't think that their tea and tech bill would have been so sky high that they couldn't afford to pay it. But they come and make, oh, big thing, list, if you see, list, secret list. Only to hear from a former tea and tech general manager who was general manager when the People's Partnership was in office between 2010 to 2015. I think he was GM between 2011 2012. Indicate that this list is nothing new. This list has existed for the longest while, and the purpose of the list really was to inform certain people, certain ministries. The list was created to protect certain ministries, perhaps certain companies that might be, making significant contributions to the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. And it's not to say that they're not to pay their bills. It's that if it is, we realize that they are experiencing problems or their bills have come due and it is past due and it is in arrears, we can reach out to them and say, well, look, listen, your bill is in arrears. Is there any issue? You need assistance with something? Is it that you require additional time? Perhaps maybe it just missed you, it skipped you, or whatever as the case may be. Because I could tell you, I don't receive how often, and some of you all could attest to that. TT Post. I still get in. I just imagine in June, I'm receiving physical bills, hard copy bills from months ago, because that whole system of them delivering bills has always been a problem. So if some of you go to wait until you receive the actual bill to pay it, there will be many occasions in which you will be disconnected. So what did I do? Sign up for the app, right? And it's the same thing. And always say, well, I know the average citizen don't get that and they don't inform you. Well, all you have to do is to sign up for the service. So whenever my bill comes due, TNTech sends me an email letting me know that my bill is now due and I'm able to see the amount that is due. And I could just go onto the app and pay with my credit card. I don't need to go and stand up in a line in TNTech to do that. So I rely on that. I am not waiting for a bill to come to me in the mail that is 2 months past due. And then at the top of it, you're seeing due for disconnection. I'm not about our life, right? So TNTech will never have one up on me with respect to that. But it is also noteworthy that there were several government ministers, former ministers, whose names were not on the list. Stuart Young's name, she didn't call Stuart Young's name as being on that list. He was prime minister for a short period of time. He was one of these most senior cabinet ministers. Coleman Burt, the Minister of Finance, his name wasn't on the list. Brian Manning's name wasn't on the list. And several other ministers, their names weren't on the list as well. So if you create this secret list, so TNTech was discriminating then. It's only certain members of cabinet. But I can't understand. Because if this list was created to benefit the top tier ministers, why wasn't Nimbert's name there? In fact, Coleman was making a joke when that came out. He said, but I'm offended. Why my name is not on the list? So what? They didn't consider me? Why wasn't Stuart's name there? Tell us that. So you tell me she got this list and say, aha, this is so earth-shattering. This is so important that I need to go and waste Parliament's time to Bossama to make this announcement. So when she thought she was coming to drop a bombshell, as is the norm, it ended up being a firecracker, right? A caps gun. And while she there pulling the trigger, right, for the caps gun, the caps was wet. Nothing, no spark, no nothing. And poor Padarat, seeing the position that he put her in, when he realized the caps gun, it ain't doing nothing. He decided there when he pulling packs, trying to make her believe that, hey, yeah, this thing has some life. Yeah, yeah, that's really the caps. No, it's not blanks. Packs. to fool her. And she take that and run with it. It went nowhere. Nowhere. Because as the persons whose names were mentioned came out and said, well, we know nothing about any list. And then the former TNTech GM came and poured cold water, not a bucket, not a barrel, a whole tank of cold water on that mark by saying this list existed for the longest while, and between 2010 to 2015, that Mrs. Prasad Bissasa's name was on this list. And then all of a sudden, talk done. They're pushing that again. We're no longer promoting that. Let us move on to other distractions because we realize, yeah, foot in mouth, egg in face. All this mark you come to bust a waste. And look at where she did it. I want you all to take something, right? She made a big announcement about this diplomatic delegation that was supposed to be going to Venezuela at some point in time to be able to treat with the issue of the gas, the cross-border gas. Where she made that statement? She made that statement while she was commissioning a fire tender at the, I think it's the Penal fire station or something, somewhere in the south, right? She thought that was the ideal forum to make an announcement like that. But then you come in the parliament to put on Hansard for posterity, because that will always be there, about a secret list. She didn't learn from the last time when she first became prime minister last year. Well, second time she became prime minister. To come with a list to tell the population about how many bus route passes the PNM issued, 600 and something bus route passes, and to call out the names of some people who had bus route passes, including the names of some councillors who received bus route passes, as if something was wrong with that. Councillors, in most instances, do more work on the ground than MPs, right? They are involved in their districts on a daily basis. When they're not in council, they're out there working. In fact, a lot of us MPs depend on our councillors to do a lot of the local government work for us. When people come to us and they come to complain about a drain that needs to be cleaned, they come to complain about street lights, about potholes on the minor roads, all of these things, we depend on them for that. And you would come to begrudge these councillors an opportunity to have a bus route pass. And that was a big thing. Yeah, bus route, let me give all some names. They see how this government was corrupt. The last administration was corrupt, they give out. I drive on the bus route almost every day. And the amount of private cars that I am seeing on the bus route with bus route passes. Because remember, they rescinded all last year. They said everybody who have bus route passes, private, bring it back. I think you had until the 1st of July or something, so to bring it back in. So everybody, so all those bus route passes that the PNM gave out, according to them, friends, family, and financiers, they were recalled. So all the bus route passes that we are seeing now when you're going on the bus route, the PNM didn't issue those. Those are UNC issued. But I would like to know how many they gave out. But they're so damn petty. These are the things that they think is important. But even if you are accusing a member of the opposition of having committed some crime, because she said in the matter of Keith Scotland that she referred it to the Commissioner of Police, and they referred it to the Integrity Commission, and she referred him to the Law Association, the Disciplinary Committee of the Law Association. But she didn't know to do that when she was in opposition, and some of her attorneys, the good lawyers, found themselves before the court. When the public was saying that these attorneys should be disbarred, no support there for that. But now you want to refer Scotland. Well, Scotland said he has his ducks in a row, he has his documentation, he has challenged Mrs. Prasad Bisasa to repeat the claim outside, which he has not done, and he will deal with that matter in the court of law. All right? So let not your heart be troubled. But I want to play something here for you, right? How much time I have there for you? To show you the level of disrespect. Where is it? Let me see if I find this here. Let's see, where did I see this? And I'm making reference to that same list and how the goodly Prime Minister creates opportunities for her supporters and mouthpieces who are being paid by the state to come and say some of the nastiest things about former Prime Minister. Listen to this, right?
So,
Listen to this. And then they accuse the PNM of engaging in division. This man who I'm about to play is a radio talk show host on 91.1. And you'll keep hearing me making reference to that, right? State media, which means that he receives a salary every month from taxpayers' dollars. Among those taxpayers is one Keith Christopher Rowley, because contrary to popular belief, Dr. Rowley is not exempt from paying taxes. No parliamentarian is exempt from paying income tax. The only exemptions we have with respect to tax has to do with the purchase of a motor vehicle. Every 2 years, we are entitled to exemptions from motor vehicle tax, from VAT, and customs duty. So you just pay the flat price of the vehicle. All other taxes we pay, right? So when we get our pay slip at the end of the month, we see PAYE and a lot of money comes out for PAYE. The Prime Minister is not exempt from that. The only public servant who is exempt from that, as far as I know, is the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and judges of the High Court of Trinidad and Tobago. I think there may be one or two other. I think also, diplomats. They are not subject to our tax system here. Foreign diplomats, right? And so on. But this man, he is benefiting from taxpayers' money. And this is what he's being paid to say.
yeah, people. So, in case you wasn't sure and you wanted to know how big of an imbecile the former Prime Minister is or was, well, it appears that he posted a light bill dated May 2026, all right, in response to the Prime Minister's announcement yesterday about this special secret protected list, right? And it appears that he posted this light bill, this current light bill, no pun intended, to prove that he pays his bill. But I have news for Keith Rowley. Nobody never said you don't pay your bill. At no point in time, and you all could go back and listen to it, did the Prime Minister say that Keith Rowley does not pay his bill. All she said is that when you were the Prime Minister and your government was in power, at TNTech, you all had a secret protected list, and she read out some of the names on this protected list, and that protected list was a list of people who, if they didn't pay the light bill, TNTech wasn't to cut them. Now, she put it into context in the form of, before she mentioned the list, she said, imagine a normal person, when they don't pay the light bill, TNTech will come and disconnect you, and then you have to pay disconnection fee and all kind of thing. So, in light of that, what the normal person is going to go through, she put it into context in terms of this protected list, that here you have a group of elite people holding government, drawing exorbitant salaries, enjoying all the perks that the country have to offer, telling people, hey, hold 4% as a salary increase for X amount of years, wanting to increase the electricity rates on residential customers, the normal man like me or you,
Wanting to increase the rates on residential rates on the normal man like me and you. So apparently, if that rate increase had gone through, Dr. Rowley's rates wouldn't have gone up. Colmembert's rates wouldn't have, members of government, their rates wouldn't have gone up. And this is the level of idiocy that your taxpayers' money paying for.
And amongst other things, because they tell you, don't eat macaroni pie. If you are accustomed eating 2 bananas, eat one. Go and get a cold pot and ride a bicycle to work, right? And in that context of them saying these things to you, they have this secret list or protected list of persons, which many of them are on, that if they don't pay the light bill, TNTech is not to cut them. Now, when you think about what these people working for, the amount of money, why they wouldn't want to pay the light bill? But that is not to say that they didn't. She just mentioned that you are on a protected list. That's all. Nobody never say you didn't pay your bill. So you posting your May 2026 light bill says absolutely nothing in the context of what the Prime Minister spoke about. So if we wasn't sure that you was an imbecile or idiot or a jackass between 2015 and 2025, I sure about that now. Want to enjoy the rest of the day. Goodbye.
Right, that is Stefan Rees, talk show host on 91.1 under the umbrella TTT Limited. Right, also has a program on Synergy TV every morning called Breaking Dawn, I think. And this is how he speaks to a former prime minister. Right? This is how he speaks to a former prime minister of this country. You know the terms that he used there to describe Dr. Rowley. Most derogatory terms. And then you understand, and then we wonder why it is that the young people behave in the way that they do and who their exemplars are. Like these people forget that social media is open to everybody. The same young people always fighting and hear them cussing and so on. They look at social media, these short clips. These are the things that they would be inclined to listen to. And you referring to a former prime minister in that derogatory term. But make the mistake to refer to Kamala Persad-Bissessar even when she was in opposition in any sort of way. Right? Today, use of such language to describe Kamala Persad-Bissessar could result in you receiving a PDO, a preventative detention order. Right? It just has to come to the attention of the police, and then the next thing, 2 black vans pull up in front of your house. Police officers come out to unmarked vehicles to warn you that what you have posted could be deemed as inciting, all right? And you could, if we had to come back here, so take down the video, and if we have to come back, we're coming back to pick you up, and you will be spending the next 3 months inside, right? Courtesy the state. You will be receiving 3 square meals a day, courtesy the state. But he is allowed to say these things about a former prime minister who served this country for 10 years as prime minister, right? At great sacrifice to his family. And the idiocy in his argument that nobody ever said that you didn't pay a bill. The point of Dr. Rowley posting the bill is to say to you, there was no, as you notice, there is no arrears on my bill. So if I wasn't paying my bill before, if I was availing myself of this so-called secret list, you would have seen a big arrears. There is none, which says to you, I have been paying my bill all the time. So there was no need for there to be any secret list. And the only thing secret about that is what it was secret to the people whose names were on the list. Because Dr. Rowley knew nothing about that list. It was a secret to him. It was a secret to Fitzgerald Hines. And everybody else whose names were mentioned, it was a secret to all of them. But what he failed to mention there is that the list predated Dr. Rowley before he came into government and before his name appeared on the list. According to the former TNTech GM, Persad-Bissessar's name was on the list before Dr. Rowley's. But he wouldn't talk about that. No mention of that. And it took them 14 months to discover this list. So it wasn't an issue in May of last year, June of last year, July of last year, August of last year. No, it wasn't an issue. It wasn't something that was so hot off the press that Persad-Bissessar needed to run to the parliament. Well, not run. Shuffle to the parliament to come and bust that mark. Wasn't that important? 14 months, right? What does that tell you? This is a government of vindictiveness, nastiness. They are not serious about government. It's about, let me see what mark we could bust. We're desperate for a mark. Dig up, see what they could find. Anything today? Anything? No. And then TNTech now, trying to cover for them, because the former GM come and bust the mark and say, well, this is not a new list. This list didn't start in 2015. This list predated 2015. It's been around for a while. And he explained the reason for the list, the rationale for the list, and whose names were on the list previously. So now, egg on Persad-Bissessar's fees. TNTech put out a statement talking about, and they make specific reference to 2015 to 2025. The list was expanded to include some or certain senior government officials. So, but the former GM is saying that that was so. But TNTech now tried to come and put out a statement to make it look as if, well, prior to 2015, it was only So some government ministries, state departments, and some, like the foreign missions and so on, diplomats, foreign diplomats who are here. But between 2015 to 2025, making it seem as if politicians were added to the list after 2015. But the former GM is contradicting that. I have not seen anybody come out and say, well, he lied. The fully done will say, well, he's a PNM, and that's why he's saying that. But TNTech has not come out to refute and only responded when he made his statement and tried to create a picture, to create a caveat that says, well, but there is no formal policy for this list, and we're not seeing any directive from the administration, and we're not seeing any documentation to support this list or any board minutes or any directive from past boards saying to establish this list. So we would have to conduct an investigation and so on. But just remember, the list predated Keith Rowley. The list predated Rowley's administration. So when you're doing your investigation, it is going to require you to go back to when Prasad Bisesa was prime minister and perhaps even before that. And why the secret list wasn't exposed between 2010 to 2015 when it existed. But only now, because Pararat looking for distraction from the fact that he should be the subject of a police investigation into an attempted assault of a member of the parliament staff. So we don't want the spotlight on that. We don't want public discourse to be focused on that. So let's just throw off some distractions into the mix now. It is good. 9-day wonder. Well, this didn't go very far. This wasn't a very good distraction. Right? You all promised a bombshell and give us a starlight, a firecracker. And we anticipate that there'll be more like that. But all the things that you all accuse the PNM of, corruption in CPEP, not a man in lockup. No police investigation into the so-called corruption into CPEP. Corruption in URP, 14 months later, not a man lockup. No police investigation into this so-called corruption. Nobody has been able to come to Parliament on Busmark Day to read out a document that says, well, this is the evidence and this is the proof. We're not saying that there wasn't corruption in URP. We know that. And it didn't start under the PNM. I've mentioned before the name Sean Bill Francis, right? The name Mark Guerra, who were labeled by the former Prime Minister Bazio Pandey as community leaders. When he was the one who coined that phrase, community leaders, and we all know the bacchanal involving Guerra and Sean Bill Francis when they were in charge of certain regions, URP regions, and all that bacchanal. So when they're trying to make it seem as, this corruption in URP started under, I told you all, as soon as the last election was over, within a week of this government being sworn in, the URP office on the highway by the Piaco lights there was overwhelmed with UNC supporters. As a matter of fact, the day after the election, I am told that you had certain UNC operatives who showed up at the office there, letting them know, well, we win, we in charge now. Right? Coming there and threatening persons who were employed and letting them know, well, hey, your day is numbered, we in charge. Prasad Bisesa herself said it, that there were several members of her party supporters who were upset with her and upset with her government because they expected that they would have been handed the reins of URP and CPEP. Right? And they would have been able to control things. According to her, they vexed because they wanted to continue the corruption. So they went into the election with the mindset of, if the UNC win, we're going to continue corruption. You admit that your own supporters are corrupt. And they vex with you because you shut down the CPEP and URP program because they thought they would have used it to eat our food. And when Khadija started to see names coming in, so by that same office in Piaco by the lights there, that her ministry had to put out a communique stating no names, right? They're not accepting any names. Instruction sent out, do not accept any more names. By that time, some 3,000 names, I am told, had already been submitted. 3,000 names. So this so-called ghosts, they were planning to continue that. But up to now, nobody in lock up, nobody in get charged. They in charge, as Mr. Padarat told us last week. They in charge. You all have access to all the information now. All the things you accuse the former administration of engaging in, you all have access to all the information. Yet, nothing. Nobody has been able to come to the parliament and read from a document to say definitively, conclusively, look, the proof here that they shut down Petrotrin to hide or to protect AV drilling. Nobody has been able to do that. Nobody has been able to come to the parliament and say, well, look, the contractors was thieving money in CPEP, and look, but you come to ask an additional $3 million, $21 million in total to wind up CPEP. To wind up CPEP. Paying money to lawyers and administrators and whoever else. And meanwhile, that money could have been put to better use to the mothers, the single mothers who prostituting themselves to feed their children. To all of these children who were doing very well in school and have now fallen behind, because if they could go to school once for the week, they're lucky. If they're going to school once in a fortnight, they're lucky. Whenever money passes and they're able to go to school. For a year now, plus, that has been their reality. They didn't get any back pay. They didn't get any 10%. In fact, they went to 0%. 0%. From what they were receiving under the PNM, they went to 0%. Nothing. They can't be on no secret list. They can't pay no TNTech bill, nothing of the sort. So right now, they had to be peeping every day to see every time they see a TNTech truck in the area, they just have to go down on their knees and say a prayer and hope the truck pass them straight. When before, the money may have been small, but at least they could have paid a bill or two. Money bouncing together. So when I hear that upstart, that backdoor president, PSA president, Leroy Baptiste come in the parliament to talk about former Petrotrin workers who took their lives and so on because of what the PNM did. Sir, I would tell you, same thing happened with CPEP, former CPEP workers and URP workers and forestry workers who took their life. Right? That father who killed himself because he and his wife who work in forestry, both of them lost their work and he couldn't find a job. And what did he do? Took his life. But no regard for them. You're not concerned with them. As far as you're concerned, like your colleague, these people are collateral damage. And if they have to wait another year or another 2 years for the money to start to run for you all to come and try to bribe them by expanding your NPOPs program, and you might hire 3,000 more because based on what Khadija said a couple of weeks ago, we just don't have the resources. 1,600 is what they're hiring and they don't really see the program being expanded right now. So continue to fend for yourself and find a work wherever you could, how you could. But while you're doing that, you have one man or individuals on 91.1. You pay the salary that they get in there to come and sit down for 2 or 3 hours to talk garbage, to malign the PNM and to push UNC propaganda. Could have paid probably 2 to 3 CPEP workers. Right? 2 to 3 CPEP workers could have gotten paid for that for the month. What you pay in one of these individuals to just sit down before a microphone for 3 hours and talk trash, to say some of the nastiest things about the former prime minister. No regard, no respect. Because always respect the office, respect the office. But you figure because Dr. Ali out of the office now, you could come and call him all of these things. With no regard for the fact that the man has a family. He has a wife who, for the most part, tried to keep herself out of the limelight. He has 2 daughters. Well, 2 daughters. He has sons, all of whom I'm sure are on social media. He has grandchildren, right? He has in-laws, all of that. And when they have to go on social media platforms to see a clown, this bald-headed idiot, Stephen Rees, saying these things and using such derogatory terms to describe Dr. Rowley, what do you think, Deputy? Do you all ever spare thought for Dr. Rowley's family? That's okay. The fully dones will clap like circus seals at these things and they will share 300 and 400 times and put comment, yes, he's a this and he's a that. But if anybody else who's opposed to this government makes the mistake to say one thing, one derogatory term to describe Prasad Bisesa, all hell break loose. They want to tell you how your mother so and so, and why you did this and you that, and you all kind of racial slurs, right? If you say Prasad Bisesa, that she not able, that she walking with that she had to be shuffling. If you say she need a human crutch or something, they're ready to fight you. But he could come and call Dr. Rowley imbecile, an idiot, All of these derogatory terms. And that's okay. No PDO for he. But say the same thing about Prasad Bisesa. And see if you don't end up in silver bracelets. Why are we here? Why are we here? How did we end up here? We told you all. So let us listen. And it was a sad thing, and I will say it again. There are those who, notwithstanding all the vex, they vex now, and calling this government must go, call election. No, we fed up. We're in a dictatorship. Next year they come and they start to spell money and all kind of thing. All is forgiven. Well, yeah, but nothing. Might come next year and say, well, we get more gas money than we thought we would have gotten. So you know what? We've decided to reverse the decision, and we will give the public servants, instead of 60-40, we will reverse it, and we will give you 60% cash or 75% cash. And all who vex now, oh, well, yeah, right. And forget all that they put you through. Yeah, your contract ended before time. Yeah, they didn't renew your contract, and you went through a whole year suffering trying to get a job and pay your bills and all the headache that comes with it. But then they call you and say, well, yeah, things pick up so you can get back your work. All is forgiven. And then you run to what? To vote for them again? Well, we have a local election next year. Let's see. All of you who bump in your gum now, let's see you put your money where your mouth is. If all of them is the same thing, yes, PNM and UNC, same thing. It ain't making no sense for me to go and vote. Right. You stick there with that. Stay there with that. And meanwhile, you just empowering their supporters to say some of the nastiest things, some of the worst things. I said before, between 2015 to 2025, they had the little closed Facebook profiles that in order for you to go into these groups and see the nastiness that they were talking and saying, you needed to join the group. And of course, the admins had to check you out to see if you're bona fide or if you're a spy. Now, they couldn't care less. They're coming out of these closed groups. They're opening some of these groups now. So it's no longer private, public. And they just commented and they couldn't care whoever sees some of the nasty comments that they say. They don't care that people are screenshotting these comments and putting it up for all and sundry to see. They couldn't care. They said, come for me. That's how they feel. Because why? They in charge, according to Parliamentary. David McIntyre saying Dr. Rowley, who 2 years older than Kamla, could have got, of course, she, as she step off, she's looking for a grab bar. Tell me a sin. Deeds don't catch up with you. Let me see. So, Owen Cunningham is saying, I don't care about them anymore. They talk me bad and I let them have it back. Let me see what else is here. So it seems Omari Hines has entered the chat. I'm seeing someone referring to him, but I'm not seeing his comment. He said exactly as Shamfa said, we in charge now, deal with it. And when Shamfa said it, you all had a problem with it. You see what's wrong here? Omari, you see what the problem is? When Shamfa said it, she shouldn't have said it. It was bad, it was disrespectful. So Parad come back and say it now. And oh yes, it's good. And that is why the politics in this country will never evolve at the parliamentary level. You know why? Because when we continue to engage in that, and I will say, whoever said it, it was wrong. I don't support it. But it has an impact. Because when Shamfa said it, they didn't let it go for 10 years. They kept it. They held on to it. For the opportunity when they get back into office, so they will do the same thing. The same thing that they objected to, they will now come in office and do. So what do you think going to happen? Contrary to as much as you all would like to believe that the UNC will be there forever, history shows that the odds are not in their favor. All right? And at some point in time, as a senior member of government told me in the elevator a couple months ago, he said, this is a cycle. Right? He says, this is a cycle. And we know eventually we will be back on the opposition bench. That's what he said to me. So when you all want to come here and say, oh, yeah, PNM dead and PNM are coming back, the people in government are saying they know that this is a cycle. And while they're on that side now, eventually the time will come when they will be back in opposition. And what do you think will happen? Just what they give is what they will get back. And the cycle will continue. And so the paradigm shift will never happen. The politics of nastiness will continue. And all what we see taking place in the parliament, it will continue. How does that benefit you as a citizen? That's what you voted for? So that when we as a new parliamentarians, when we go and we sit down there and we said, right, we go in and do things differently. And you have members opposite, like the Attorney General getting up to refer to members on the opposition bench as behaving like, as for instance, as little girls. There's the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago in the parliament saying these things, putting that kind of rhetoric and that kind of language on Hansard. And this is what these people don't think, that when future politicians, those who participate in the youth parliament later on this year, when they go to pull up Hansard to see, and they see in these kind of things, the Attorney General talking about, well, you know, the member for Diego Martin notice, he have a problem with when he's speaking and the noise. He said, I don't have that problem. He said, I'm not going to come here and stand up and whine like a little girl and all this kind of thing. Who are you trying that for? Who are you trying that for? But then you all like to say in parliament, they kicks in and there's a set of jokers and the parliament is a circus and there's only clowns in there. Understand what feeds it. And when people like you and UNC supporters encourage the nastiness, it's not going to change. Let me see. Let's see what they say here. Someone is asking, is Annabelle Brasnell still the corporate communications manager at TNTech? I'm not sure, Mikhail. You could probably look into that. Joy O'Brien is saying what citizens need to do is write down all the mistakes from this administration, then make your choice in 2030 because nothing is going to change. So true. And the population don't believe that. Imagine, I saw an article come out a couple of days ago from the CSO talking about inflation has eased from to some 0.3%, I guess, over the last month or so. And when I read the comments at the time, there were about 217 comments. I read all 217. Not one was in support of that article. People were asking, where the CSO get that information? Which grocery they went to find out that? Like the CSO went and interviewed the vendor who is accused of selling potatoes from the dump. Had to be, because clearly they didn't go to the same groceries that we go into to shop to come up with that. They're not going to the same market. Something wrong. That's what people say. They tell you when when everybody's supposed to win. Have you won? Are you winning? In the crashed economy, it was easier back then to get 200 US than it is now. What have they fixed? Kamla told us about the cartel, the Forex cartel, and we were supposed to hear about this Forex cartel and the report. Here we are 1 year later, still waiting on this report into the Forex cartel. Her own central bank governor, who she appointed, $11.625 million man, say there's no evidence of any cartel. Don't know where the PM get that from, but yeah, no such evidence. But all they took chain up, plenty of you all took chain up, all that choppy talk and ran to the polls and voted for them or decided you were not going to vote at all. And that is why they are where they are today. Right. Let's see what else we have here. Shirley Henry saying, my son says the people never knew the company does it. Exactly. Kamala need to study the crime more than she need to study who are paying light bill and so forth. When she was in the choppers, she could care less who talk and say what. Yes, that is so true. And speaking about the issue of crime, anybody knows what the exact number of murders are? I'm confused because so over the last 24 to 48 hours, we've had about what, 5 or 6 murders take place. We know that we're in the vicinity of anywhere between 184 and 206. And I'm saying 206, so 184, I'm using as the minimum base because I heard, based on Ian Allen's Facebook page, he's saying it's about 183. I think DJ's Sheriff is saying it's about 185. And then there is a publication called crimehotspot.com. And they are saying, let me see. Sorry. They are saying it's about 206. Yes, crimehotspots.com, they are saying it's 205. So I guess they have to update from yesterday because and why I'm inclined to take their statistics is because they have a list of every single murder that they have added to the toll, the date, and the names of the persons, the incidents. So for example, the latest one they have here, June 19, one incident, Superior, 2 men shot dead at a birthday party on Taylor Avenue. June 17, Port of Spain, Marlon Hamlin, 51, shot dead in taxi on Charlotte Street. June 16, one incident, Red Hill, Sheldon Bullet Augustin, 37, shot dead near gambling den. June 14, 2 incidents, Carsonfield, unidentified man shot dead and found in bushes, Gerard Khan, they updated it. Dabadi, man stabbed to death during domestic row, taxi driver Colin Anthony Danclair, 46. June 13, 2 incidents, Chagonas, Venezuelan woman, Marianes Jimenez, 28, stabbed to death on way to work. Diego Martin, Nigel Ling Ferguson, 32, shot dead at home. So they actually identify and they tell you all of the murders. So and they are saying that as at the 19th of June, there's 205 murders. So more murders than days. And if this 205 is correct, which I have no reason to doubt because, as I said, they are listing every murder, it means that we are ahead of where we were for the same period last year. And as I told you all before, this government strategy for fighting crime or to keep the crime numbers low is 1, TTPS website always down, so you can't get the figures there. And 2, use preventative detention orders to lock up the usual suspects, keep them incarcerated as close as possible till the end of the year, so they're not outside committing crimes that you can't solve because they have no evidence. And therefore, if they're inside, they can't commit crimes on the outside. So you keep the numbers low, and once you can keep it below what the PNM figures were, you're good to go. Right? That is their strategy. So there's no plan, anti-crime plan really intended to save people's lives. It's just about keeping the numbers below the PNM numbers so that you can come and boast and say crime low or crime is down under the UNC. But what they can't hide is the home invasions, which continue unabated. Every day, home invasions. But murders was rolling 600 per year and 630 in 2020. You say, well, that's a lie. You come at 630. Your prime minister says 624. Make up all your mind now. Oh gosh. Highest in TNT existence under the PNM. Let us discuss that. Yes, let's discuss that. We've already discussed that here, Zuku. And we've made the point. I read out for you. Israel Khan said he cries shame on the UNC for failing to support legislation that the PNM brought to fight crime, right? To keep the criminals behind bars. You remember that? When the UNC opposed practically every piece of legislation that the PNM brought to fight crime because they claimed that the PNM would use it to go after UNC supporters and UNC politicians. You remember that? You remember those things? And perhaps if the PNM had done what the UNC did, or has been doing to hold a perpetual state of emergency, the numbers would have been less. Because remember, when the 624 murders took place in 2024, remember the UNC were calling for state of emergency, and they have said that. They said the PNM took too long to call the state of emergency. That is the only thing they've had. And I would ask you, Zuku, tell me one other thing, just one, that this government has done in the last 14 months to bring down crime. Just tell me one. I'm making it easy for you. Other than the state of emergency, tell me one other thing that they have done. Right? You can't tell me nothing. PNM had the ruling major parliament for excuse. All right. Let me educate you because clearly you're fully dunce. The PNM, any legislation that requires the government or that impinges or any legislation that infringes on a person's human rights, constitutional rights, requires a special majority. Okay? It requires a special majority, which the PNM did not have. In case you forgot, the PNM had 23 seats from 2015 to 2020, and then they went down to 22 seats from 2020 to 2025. In fact, it went down to 21 when Lisa Morris Julian passed away. So they did not have a special majority. And what is the minimum special majority? Zuku is at least 26 seats. The UNC has 26 plus the 2 rubber stamps from Tobago, they have 28. 22 and 23 seats is no special majority. That is what you call a simple majority, which is why whenever the PNM brought legislation that required them to make that would have infringed on a person's constitutional rights, and it required the support of the opposition, and the then opposition said we're not supporting, the PNM then had to come back and, as the UNC would say, water down the bill and remove certain aspects of the bill that would infringe on persons' constitutional rights so that it could be passed with a simple majority. That is why when the PNM wanted to bring the bail amendment bill, to make it that if it is you were accused of a gun crime, you could be denied bail for up to 120 days, and the UNC refused to support it, that the bill did not pass. It failed because the PNM did not have the special majority in the lower house, and when it went to the Senate, they needed the support of the opposition or support from the independent bench, and because they did not get sufficient support, the bill failed. That is why Israel Khan came and said, I cry shame on the UNC for not supporting the bail amendment bill, for not supporting the administration of justice bill. You know why? Because they believe that when they don't support the legislation and crime continues and it escalates, the PNM would look bad and it will improve the UNC chances of getting back into office. So before you come on my live and come on my chat and talk rubbish and show your lack of knowledge or highlight your ignorance, go and educate your ignorance, please, and understand the difference between what requires a simple majority and what requires a special majority, which the PNM did not have. Almost every time when the PNM is out of office, when the NER was there, they had 33. That is what you call, that is as best a majority you could get, unless you have all seats, all 36 or all 41. 2010 to 2015, the UNC again had a special majority, 29 seats. The PNM had 12. They did not need the support of the opposition, unless, of course, the legislation that you're bringing requires a 2/3 majority. All right? Which means once it's 2/3. That is why that when this state of emergency ends in September, the law or the constitution says that the only option the UNC has is to come for a 6-month extension. And to get that 6-month extension, they will require a 2/3 majority, which they do not have. They will need another 2 or 3 votes in the lower house to pass that, which they will not get from us. Okay? So that is why they will not, that is why back in January, they didn't come for the 6-month extension, because they knew they would not get our support. So what did they do? They brought the SOE in, ran through February, and then came back in March with a whole new one that gave them a whole new, so it reset. So they now were entitled to a 3-month, by another 3 months, and then a 6-month. You understand? Jeez. Ray started to say, Dominic, you need to install a recycle bin and put in the right corner. I agree with you. Marie Hines is saying, yes, all 11 tell people coming down and harassing us in Sultan Central. And the fact that it is lost on him how discriminatory that is. Again, always talking about Lavantil people. Marie, you know where Lavantil is? You ever went to Lavantil? Something wrong with Toles. But when Kareem said what he said, that they don't like, when he talks about they don't like us, you know who's he talking about? The people that he represents in Lavantil that you all always washing your mouth on and have the worst of things to say. Comments like that only Lavantil people coming down and harassing people from Central and South. But then you all vex when the man says, when he speaks his truth and speaks the fact, that this is how the people from Lavantil feel when they see stupid comments like that. Because as far as you are concerned, everybody in Beetham, everybody in Silat, everybody in Lavantil, everybody in Mova is only criminals. That's all. They have nobody there, no law-abiding citizens living in Lavantil East Mova or Lavantil West or Port of Spain South. Everybody there are criminals. Always talking about, look at the state, these constituencies loyal to the PNM, and look at the condition and look at the habitat. As if every UNC constituency is perfect. I am sure there are many rural UNC constituencies where people still using outhouses, using latrines and so on, where they have bad roads and the same conditions that you all talk about in Laventille and Beetham exists in UNC constituencies. But you know what? Nobody goes down there to highlight it. Nobody goes down there. I had cause to go down to Pinal last week. First time in my life I went to Pinal. Right? And I could tell you, I saw some areas down there. It's like, these is UNC areas? Wow. But anyway, that's the nonsense you all like to talk about. The Zoso bill will be passed with amendments and crime will be down. Anyway, it's almost time for me to end this live, right? But so, Zuku, let me help you out again. Why didn't the Zoso bill pass the first time? You know why? Because it required a special majority, which the government did not have. That is why it didn't pass. They didn't have the special majority in the upper house. They required the support of the independents or members of the opposition, and they failed to get that support, and it did not pass. So if they bring it back, it's the same point I made to you earlier. Those aspects of the bill which infringes on people's constitutional rights, which will make the bill requiring the support of either the opposition or the independent bench, what the government will simply do is to tweak that, remove some of those infringements and water down the bill as the CDPNM used to do. And then in so doing, it would only require a simple majority, and the government has the numbers for a simple majority for the bill to pass. You understand? So look how you're making comments that just highlights your ignorance. So we will go from SOE to ZOSO. That making sense to you, right? So that they could continue to do the same thing. Lock up the usual suspects. Look, there's an article with a fellow who got arrested under the SOE. He spent 2 months inside. And you know what he's saying? 2 months inside without charge. And it has impacted him negatively. It caused him to lose his job, right? Because when they pick you up and you inside for 2 months, you didn't show up for work, so you lost your work. No charge. So they held him, but they didn't charge him for anything. He was detained for 2 months, and then they released him. So I go back to your life now. Yeah, we have no evidence, nothing to charge you with. So okay. We just thought that we just figured you as usual suspect, and you know, but we have no evidence of that, so we cannot bring any charges against you. So hard luck there. But yeah, that's how this goes sometimes. So quick, go back now and lead your life. What are you supposed to go and do now? Go to his employer after 2 months and say, well, you know, they held me and they released me without charge. I could go to the police station now and I could request a certificate of character, and it would show I have no charges. Right? Employer say, well, here what, now hard luck, you know, things tough, and we already hire somebody to replace you. So what I could tell you, boy, that's how life goes sometimes. But you know, we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. So he's out of a job. He has bills to pay, probably a family to support. Aside from the as he said, the mental effect that it's had on him having to live under those inhumane conditions for 2 months. Right? You care? No, you don't care. It helped your government. And the same thing they did. So now his only recourse will be to sue the state. Because if he can't find a job and they have not charged him with anything, he now has a case, go and find a lawyer, sue the government, and let the taxpayers foot the bill for the court to order that he be paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in compensation for wrongful arrest. And that is the nonsense that you all support. So you feel that is exactly what will happen under Zoso. Because they could keep Zoso, it doesn't require them to come back to the parliament ever so often, every 3 months, to vote on it again, to extend it. No, it doesn't require that. So they could run Zoso for the next 4 years and do the same thing. Pick up people and hold them under preventative detention orders for as long as they want to. And then after a while, when the facilities start to get overcrowded, who we have here the longest by? Yeah, he inside here for 5 months. All right, get rid of him. Send him, let him go, because let him go. If anything, we'll pick him up in the next 6 months' time. Yeah, we'll rotate it. And you just keep building the list of people who have a case against the government. But the lengths that you all will go to defend this UNC is mind-blowing. Jenny.
Hi, Dominic.
Hi.
Good afternoon to you, Dominic. Good
Greetings.
afternoon and happy Father's Day to all fathers of the line, those who don't walk away from the children, even when things get hard.
Yes.
They stand up and the mothers don't have to take them to court to get monies for minding the children.
Mhm.
I ain't talking about them fathers. I'm talking about the fathers who, despite what are there with the children, whether they live in the same space or not, making sure that the children have whatever little it is they may have, especially in these times when over 40,000 workers have been fired, right? The most vulnerable in some cases, and I know there are some fathers cannot even provide now, more adding stress to the system, along with those who never used to help before. So we're in a really bad place, but I hope that these fathers who would stand firm, fight, don't give up, because the children at the end of the day is what is really, really important. So
Yes.
I want to wish those fathers happy Father's Day. Dominic, I want to touch on two topics here more related to labor. I see that the OWT is very excited and joyous about the new legislation, where they are now, I think, they are now the recognized majority union for
Yes.
career workers and heritage workers. I am happy for that. But people is labor at the end of the day, and people need people to represent them. And so that is not my issue. I want to know if they have interfered with the Industrial Relations Act, Part 6, the agency shop order that says, 71, every worker, as between himself, his employer, and co-workers, shall have the following rights. That is to say, A, the rights to be a member of any trade union or any number of trade unions of his choice. B, the right not to be a member of any trade union or other organization of workers, or refuse to be a member of any particular trade union or other organization of workers. 3, where he's a member of a trade union, the right subject to this act to take part in the activities of the trade union, including any activities such as due to become an official of the trade union, and if appointed or elected, hold office as such an official. My two parts is A and B, which speaks about the right of a worker to be a member of any trade union of their choice, or their rights to not to be any involved with any trade union of their choice. You are now saying that career and heritage, the RMU status goes to the OWT. If I'm a worker in career or in heritage, and I don't want OWTU to represent me for whatever reason, you are telling me I have to. That's what I'm saying. So my money comes out, my salary to pay a union, I may not want to represent me. So I have challenges with that. But in terms of union activity and workers' rights and all that, I'm all for that. But you see, taking away of people's rights, and this government seems to have a penchant for taking away the rights of the citizen. So that is another right that has been taken away. You could tell me who union I have to pay my dues to, and who union I have to join in order to get help. When the Industrial Relations Act had it before, you have a right to or not to. I want to move forward. This situation where Mr. Anisette would have invited Mr. Philip to the Labor Day March. I want to say I'm not really a fan of Mr. Anisette. But in this situation here, I am in agreement in what he said. I'll tell you why. When unions back in the day of Uriah Butler, there were persons like one, Miss Elma Francois, who they don't talk about on the labor stage no more. She was a heroine. She was made a heroine in this country in 1990 something. She was instrumental in forming SWWTU, that is Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union, and NUGFW. That is the one that's with the Pavement Lambert and then, right?
Yes.
National Works, right. She was instrumental in forming those two unions. Not only that, she was instrumental when Mussolini invaded Italy. When Mussolini invaded Ethiopia, was Ethiopia? Oh, yeah. And he was dropping chemical warfare on them. And Selassie went before the House of the Leagues of Nations, now they are now the United Nations, Leagues of Nations, to talk to them about what was happening, because those type of warfare was banned from wars. So it was a big thing all over the world. Elmer Francois was instrumental in making sure the port of Trinidad and Tobago don't unload no container coming from Italy. That's how powerful she was. But the part I want to really come to is this. Other than labor issues that was fought on the labor front, they also had a social and welfare committee that dealt with issues that are not really labor related, but anybody has issues, the women who have issues, the children, and those kind of things. So marching on Labor Day is not simply about labor and work related issues. It's about social issues.
Correct.
Mr. Anisette, as far as I know, he is the General Secretary of NATUC, the umbrella body of several trade unions in this country. Not only that, NATUC is recognized internationally and regionally, unlike Phyton and Chatham, that they have no standing into, nobody don't recognize them other than Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm showing you the importance of a General Secretary of NATUC that is recognized internationally. If he, as a General Secretary, tell somebody, come and march with us and let your voice be heard, in my opinion, he has the authority to do that. And the person come to march will be covered under his including them, because they would have gotten permission. He is the General Secretary of our umbrella body, and if he make a decision, this person voice to be heard, and I invite them. If any authority was to treat with that matter, it was supposed to be Anisette you look up, not the girl. She didn't come there and she owned, and Mr. Anisette made it clear, I am a witness to this. I invited her. So if you want to deal with anybody, it should supposed to be Mr. Michael Anisette. But they didn't do that. They, for whatever reason, went at the young lady. But again, I'm saying, Labor Day is not simply about marching for workers' rights and their money. It also have an aspect of social justice. People who have issues that may not be work-related, they're free to make the placard and come and join the march. And if you are invited by a prominent person in the labor movement, the General Secretary of NATU, then I find it hard to digest the conversation we are hearing that this young lady did not have permission. So I just want to rest it there again. Our labor rights are being taken away, but on one side, I would say it's for the goodness of the people. However, rights. You see, when they take away people's rights, no matter how good you say it is, you have taken away people's rights. And that cannot be compensated for. Well, this is for your benefit. If you take away my rights, it's just like giving me 60% non-cash. My rights is, when I work every month, the agreement is, I give you my labor and you pay me in cash for my labor. And if there are any monies to come from negotiation based on the salaries they give me, any increases, you can't come and give us some non-pay and tell me, well, I will give money to pay your car, pay your house and all that. No, you're disrespecting me. You can't tell me how to spend my money. And finally, the case that was won by Ms. Glenda Hood Caesar when the NRL take away the 10%, it stands on the law books of this country to today. Our salaries, just like the property is described in the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, our salaries are to be considered as our property. So anytime you interfere with our salaries without me agreeing to it, you have broken the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, Dominic. Have a blessed week ahead, and to everybody else, same thing.
You too. Thank you, Jen. I'm seeing Banmana is saying, asking the question why Jenny and company never spoke a word for African contractors under the PNM while Junior Sammy sucked the PNM dry. You know, sometimes you all can be very unfair, right? Because and I just give you an example, right? Every time when PNM gave contracts to African contractors, as you all want to call them, UNC jump out itself to say that these contractors are criminals, that they are gangsters, that the PNM was giving contracts to the criminal element to keep them quiet. Kamla Prasad Bisesa said that in the parliament. I think it was, if not this week, last week, that they were giving contracts to the criminal element, to the gangsters, to keep them quiet. That's what they were saying. Look, they said Foster Cummins and relatives get how much contracts and so on from HTC and whatnot. All that talk. Where were the defenders for these people? Where were the defenders for these people? Mention is made here, example is given of Junior Sami. But the work that Junior Sami was doing, right? Where he has all of the equipment. How many road contractors do we have? Big road contractors. Do we have like the likes of Junior Sami and these guys? I used to complain about that, where I said that Junior Sami and they getting all of these contracts, it is their heavy equipment that damaging the roads, and they would never come and say, well, hey, let me give back. We will approach the government and we will tell them, well, okay, we will pave X amount of kilometers of road, provide us with the material, and we will provide the labor and the equipment. You would never hear them say that. It's always all these people looking for contracts, they get contracts from the government, as the case may be. When we would advocate, but the fact of the matter is that the UNC always made it out to be any time a small contractor gets some work and this person is of African descent, that's what they used to come and say. Now, I would have heard, maybe you didn't hear it all the time, but I know I would have heard PNM activists who would have come out to speak about that and the challenges that some of these contractors, but we can't just only look at that. I have spoken about the fact that not PNM, African contractors would have worked on one of the biggest projects, which was the Red House. Over $125 million were given to African contractors. That's what I could confirm. At least 5 African contractors got $125 million in contract for the Red House project alone. The projects to renovate 5 of the Magnificent 7 buildings. You had a lot of, again, when I checked the contractors, you all recall when Philip Alexander was going all over the place, stand up in front of the president's residence, doing live and talking about how much money the government spent for that project, when he did his live in front of the Red House and said that they spent $441 million, and all they did was change some shingles on the roof, change some windows, and slap on a new coat of paint, and they spent $441 million. And he was calling on Dr. Rowley to release the names of the contractors, and Dr. Rowley did just that, provided the whole list. I went through the list and did my research to see, okay, who owns this company, who owns that company, and that is how I was able to discover that at least 5 of the companies, the largest single contract, $66 million for electrical work, went to an African-owned company. So it is not fair to say that African contractors did not benefit. And the unfortunate reality is that sometimes when they do benefit, unlike, well, I wouldn't say it's unfortunate, unlike what certain other contractors would do to make it known, right? They don't come and trumpet it. So sometimes people are seeing names. You see the big billboard with the contract information on the contractor and so on. And we believe, well, nah, that had to be a 1% owned business, or that has to be an East Indian owned business. Because our first thought is that we naturally prone to believe, nah, you see that big project there? That can be an African owned business doing that. How many of us actually take the time when we see certain names on these billboards to go and check to see, well, okay, let me do my investigation. And more often than not, you may very well find that some of these contractors are of African descent. Banmay saying, have you ever read what Mr. Warner, Dr. Rowley's schoolmate, about being an African contractor in theatre? And I agree with you. And look at how they vilified Mr. Warner. Look at that. Right? They talk about how he in cahoots with Dr. Rowley. He built the housing development in Tobago where Dr. Rowley bought one of the houses and his daughter bought one of the houses. Inez Gate, I think, was the name of the project. They talk about that. Right? The quarry issue. In fact, I think it was, again, just about a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Warner's name, or just last week when the Prime Minister was making mention, I think, of the list. I think a company owned by the Warners was probably mentioned on that list as well. Again, to malign them. So it is not even when the PNM is in power, it is a challenge for African-owned contractors to come out and show themselves, because they would be attacked. Because the first thing they will say, they didn't win that. Well, the other side will say is that these contracts were not given to these persons based on merit or meritocracy, but rather it was given because of favors to friend, family, and financiers. And we see it, unfortunately. Let me see. Contractors supposed to get contracts after lawful tendering process. And I agree with you on that point. Nobody is saying no. But the fact of the matter is that there is the perception that certain contractors, because of ethnic background, may not. And you see, the thing is that it is possible, and this is a challenge when it comes to what is called affirmative action. Because the PNM had taken a decision, look, we would set up a policy where contracts given out in certain constituencies, preference would be given to contractors that come from these constituencies so that they can hire people from the constituency and the constituencies can benefit directly. Rather than you bring a contractor from outside to give them a contract from some constituency in Ohio to give them a contract when you have people, contractors who live in the constituency, whose businesses are in the constituency, and then they could do the work. And on that basis, so it is possible that the government can establish legal policy that states this. Preference will be given to contractors from there so that we can assist the communities directly to create employment opportunities and so on. And that is why we see sometimes in certain places, contractors can't work unless they have police with them, because persons living in the communities will say, well, so why we can't get work? We live in here. You're coming to do a job in our constituency. You're coming to do a job in our neighborhood, our community. You have persons here who could do the work, who are skilled enough to do the work, but you're bringing laborers from outside to do. Give us some. That's all they're asking for, a fair shake. Instead of bringing workers from outside, help us. So I don't see anything wrong with a policy like that. It is community development, because when contractors who have the capacity to do the work in the constituency are seeing people from the outside coming in, and we say, well, yes, this is the tendering process and so on. Nothing wrong with, you have the same tendering process, but of course you say contractors. If it is you don't have contractors from the constituency, you could do the work fine. Bring people from outside. Do that. But what is wrong with affirmative action? Because we keep complaining about the African community and the African community not benefiting and so on. And therefore, there needs to be some sort of direct intervention to assist the African community. Because if it is that a contractor is being denied the opportunity to bid simply because he can't go to the bank to get a loan to purchase equipment, or he can't go to the bank to get a loan to purchase material or whatever it is because of where he is from. So by virtue of the fact that his business is he can't get a loan to purchase a property in Laventille because the banks and the finance houses say, we're not interested in no property in Laventille. We're not interested in no property in East Port of Spain. I have had people come to me and tell me that they're looking for financing to purchase a house on Observatory Street because the bank and the credit union tell them they're not interested, they don't give loans for property in these areas. But the person, when they got a valuation, it says the property worth $500,000. But the bank saying we're not interested in that. Because even though it's worth $500,000, if you default on your loan and we have to seize the property and sell it, nobody other than people who live in there would want to buy that property. And the people who live in that area can't afford to buy it. There needs to be some sort of direct intervention to be able to treat with that. And Zuku is saying Warner is before the court. Warner is the only one before the court, right? Nobody else before the court. Okay. Warner has no legitimate businesses. And again, that is the problem. That is the problem. And Namalco is before the court. Ramhit before the court too. But you have no problem with them being able to get contracts now. And all of the contractors who are before the court in the EMBD matter, you have no issues with them now receiving big contracts, $1 million contracts and $1 billion contracts, and they are before the court. But you want to put in big and bold that one are before the court. You see what the problem is? Innocent until proven guilty. Something called natural justice. All right? And Warner has not been convicted of anything. No crime. Just to remind you of that. Let me see here. We are seeing names of contractors who did not get any contracts from the government in the last under the PNM for 10 years. And all of a sudden now, those are the only names that we are hearing. Persons who stand accused, contractors who stand accused of trying to defraud public utility companies such as WASA, where a big contractor took WASA to court for I think it was $100 and something million, claiming that this is outstanding monies that was owed to him by the utility. And then you know what he did in the end? Accepted a settlement for about 34 million. When you claiming that WASA owe you 100 and something million, but you accept a settlement for 34. Who does that? If you have a legitimate claim and you have documentation that can prove that you are owed 100 and some plus million dollars, why would you settle for such a paltry sum of 30 something million? You tell me that. Make that make sense to me. There could only be one answer to that. And yet still, and these people, some of these contractors may have been blacklisted because of things like that. And today, they feature prominently in receiving contracts from this government, notwithstanding their history in respect of matters such as those. I have a question. Are you a part of the penny PNM or the Stewart PNM? I'm a part of the PNM. I don't know anything about any penny PNM and any Stewart PNM. We are one PNM. All right? One PNM. Penelope Beckles Robinson is the political leader of the PNM, and that is who I support. She is the political leader. Okay? Talk done. I am a member of the opposition. She is the opposition leader. That is who we recognize as the opposition leader. Until such time as that changes, let that be my answer to your question. I don't know anything about any Stewart PNM or any Penny PNM or any Foster PNM or any other PNM. Munila Lee, Padarat before the court, exactly, and sitting in the parliament as ministers. How come Julian is the only person acting as PM? Kamla 2.0 is not as trusting of her colleagues as Kamla 1.0. Exactly. Under Kamla 1.0, everybody and the dog was getting attendees. Everybody getting a Kobo sweater act as PM. Now, and you see, and it just goes to show, right? They learned it. She's taking pattern from Dr. Rowley. Because for 9 years or so, Dr. Rowley only allowed one person to act as prime minister, and that was Colman Burt. And then he started to allow Stewart to act as prime minister. Kamla Pasabi says now on the few occasions that she's traveled so far, only Jolene John has been placed to act as prime minister. I know what's the interesting dynamic in that. Jolene John is of African descent. The UNC is predominantly East Indian descent. You're not hearing the usual suspects talking about, oh, Jolene is African and they put in an African to act as prime minister, and that is an affront to the base of the party and so on. But when Dr. Rowley decided to put Colman Burt to act because Mr. Imbert was not an African, the same usual suspects who have no problem with Jolene acting as the prime minister for a party that draws the bulk of its support from persons of East Indian descent had a big issue with that. Look at that. What message are sending to the Africans? Look at who Rowley put in. Look at that. You see where the hypocrisy lies? And then when he puts Stuart Young, so why you couldn't put an African? There's so much African there who there before, so we think, but look who he put in. But none of these people coming out now to talk about, well, why Mrs. Pasabi Sessa doesn't put an East Indian to act. You see? And that is why the PNM has always held to a different standard. And this is the kind of thinking. This is the kind of thinking is why we are in opposition today, because PNM supporters bought into that rhetoric. And they bought it from the UNC, who was seeking to sow seeds of division in the PNM by making these ridiculous statements, unfounded utterances. But it had currency with PNM supporters. Today, Jolene acting, oh yes, she's so competent and all of that, and she's the best person to act. And you have UNC supporters coming and saying, yes, that's the next prime minister, that is the next leader of the UNC. But that could happen on the UNC side. But for somebody who is non-African to be given an opportunity with the PNM, that's a problem. Coalpot Scotland gets passed over for Imbert. Okay. Right. And I can say the same thing about the UNC. Mr. If your bank increase your fees, find another bank. If your landlord increase your rent because of the landlord surcharge, move, find another place to live. He getting passed over for jailing. Yes, he getting passed over for jailing. So when you all want to commit your dotish comparisons like that, just remember you're living in a glass house. Jenny says it is ironic that those who say the PNM appeases the 1% fail to acknowledge that it was Kamala's PM who had a whole event at the diplomatic center to celebrate the same 1%. Correct. Correct. Same person. Same person who today has stopped projects that the PNM started, infrastructure projects that the PNM started to build buildings, state-owned buildings to house ministries and government departments, has paused construction on those buildings started under the PNM so that you could continue to rent, spend millions of dollars in rent, and put millions of dollars in rent money into the pockets of the same 1% whose buildings are now occupied by state entities. And I always give the example, they all had a million things to say about Faris and how Rowley and them and how much money Faris getting in rent. But today, the evidence is there. The PNM was constructing a new headquarters for the Ministry of Social Development on the corner of Chagrit Road and Victoria Avenue. It is there. Construction was moving apace. The UNC came in and they put it on pause, so it is under review. And in the meantime, the government continues to rent a building to house the head office of the Ministry of the People and Social Development from the same Faris that Ole had a problem with. When you could have finished that building, if they had continued the construction on that building, by now, if it wasn't complete, in the 14 months since they've come into office, it would have been almost complete, ready for occupation. Might have just been a waiting outfitting for them to put in furniture and so on. But today, take a pass and see where the building is and the state that it is in. And that is just one. They stopped construction of the EBC headquarters behind the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Go there and you will just see the galvanizer around. The big equipment and heavy equipment that was there before, just prior to the election, is no longer there. That is also on pause. The transition home that the PNM was building down on South Key, just before the entrance to City Gate, that big building there with concrete block building that you see there has been construction ceased, which the PNM was constructing to house the people who live in and who sleep in every night in front of Republic Bank and Royal Bank and KFC. That too has stopped. That too has stopped. So when you all want to make it seem as if the PNM only for the 1% and the 1% understand who benefits the most from the coffers of the state, it is not the PNM. It's not when the PNM is in power. Just remember, Jerry Hadid wasn't in a PNM cabinet. It wasn't the PNM that put George Nicholas, the son of Issa Nicholas, on the board to chair the board of Caribbean Airlines. Just remember that. Why construction stopped on Balize House same time you all left office? Because contrary to what you all, to the claims that you all like to make, we wasn't thieving money. If we were stealing, if the PNM was stealing money, all right? If they were stealing money, that building would have been finished. So we were using the resources that the party had. But you see, the thing is, when we were in office, all right, and we were having events like our biggest fundraiser, something called September Fair. All right, I'll just give you that example. That's the PNM's biggest fundraiser. So every year for Republic Day or in recognition of Republic, we would have a gala dinner at the Hyatt. And it's $1,500 a ticket. When we were in power, right? Everybody used to come to that, yeah, because they want to come and rub shoulders with ministers and they want to rub shoulders with the prime minister and all of that to say, yeah, thing. People buying a whole table. As soon as you're out of office and you consider, well, then I have no benefit in supporting the opposition, we notice the numbers drop. So not as many people will purchase tickets. Not as many people will purchase tables, bio tables, and so on. Yeah, because everybody now looking to see if they could gravitate towards the sitting government. When a man could go to a UNC fundraiser and spend $200,000 to purchase a picture, a blown up picture of the Prime Minister from her younger years, right? They have an auction and he just said, $200,000 for a blown up picture. We never saw that happening with the PNM. Okay? I never see nobody buy a picture of Dr. Rowley for no $200,000. Just letting you know that. And they say in Balize house built with party funds. And again, you see, you UNC supporters, if only dons wouldn't understand. Because if it wasn't being built with party funds, the companion building would have been finished by now. So all it was quoting, oh, 200 million, 300 million to build the building. If it was stolen money, okay, as I said before, it would be finished. The fact that it does not compete tells you where the funding came from. Because if it was coming from financiers, it would be finished. If it was coming from stolen money, it would be finished. So when it is the PNM, in its wisdom, you see, because you UNC supporters wouldn't understand fundraiser, because all you had some fund, you all used to have the dollar fet and the choker fet to raise money. And as former treasurer Unanan Prasad asked, all you raised $9 million to build a headquarters. Where the money went? Not a brick went down, not a foundation built, nothing, but the money disappeared. The PNM, so let me tell you, we have membership dues. In order for you to participate in the party's election, you're required to pay your membership dues. It's $120 a year or $10 a month, right? We have over 100,000 party card holding members who are required if you want to participate in, for instance, in the upcoming internal elections, in the constituency elections where you vote to elect constituency executives and so on. You are required to ensure that your dues are paid up. You all wouldn't understand that. All right, so let me give you another example. The PNM, to build that building and to renovate Balize House, we had something called Buy a Brick, where we asked our supporters to just buy one brick. If you have 100,000 supporters, and we're telling you, if you could buy more, great, but just buy one. One brick, one concrete block that might cost what, $5, $7? Just one. Some people will say, well, I think I could buy 100 blocks for you, man. That is no problem. That is how you do it. So the money that will be spent on the blocks, if the supporters come because they're supporting the party, they want to see our headquarters because it really needed work. For years, it needed work. We also had other events. So when you talking about they had car raffle and they're selling Polori, no, we had other events, fundraising events that you all know nothing about. When we were having the PNM Fete every year, you see the same way you all had your dollar Fete and your choker Fete, we had our PNM Fete, but we weren't fooling people and charging $1. And that's shoppiness. We weren't doing that. So the Fete is costing, ticket was costing $250, $300. Things like that. Okay? We have been on the 27th of this month, our big back in time Fete. Yeah? Up at Cascadia. Just to let you know. These are the things that we were doing all the time. At one point in time, the PNM was selling memorabilia, jewelry. And I saw a friend of mine bought a ruby ring, gold with ruby. These were the things, the innovative things. So it wasn't just the car raffle. You all had a car raffle. All of these different things is what we were doing. So you need to understand, think about it. If we were stealing money, as you all claim, or if it is that the financiers was funding it, it would be finished, because obviously an unfinished building doesn't look well or present well for the reputation of the People's National Movement. Okay? Just to put that there. Someone counted 54 red band maxi in San Fernando for a PNM rally. But obviously, if it is you have supporters coming from all over, what do you expect? We encourage our supporters to come out to our meetings, right? For the family day that we had, I could tell you from my constituency alone, just from my constituency alone, supporters from our constituency, we had 6 big maxis of supporters. 6 filled maxis of supporters just from Malabar Mausika alone, because Malabar Mausika, formerly W Mirror, we were the reigning champions, right? And our supporters came out to try and score the hat-trick for 2 consecutive Sports and Family Day. The PNM, the Malabar Mausika Dabadio Mirror constituency, won everything. The only thing we didn't win was the tug of war. And so we ensured that we mobilized and we reached out to our supporters and we tell them, hey, we want to have a show in because we want to make it 3 in a row. So come out. And people said, okay, once all they're providing transport, let us know and we will be there. But the maxis had to be paid for. Okay? And who paid for it? Me, the MP. I paid for it out of my pocket. What else you need to know? Okay? Right. But the PNM Corporation paid for it. I paid for it out of my pocket. If you want to see the receipt, you could see that too. Okay? The MPs paid for it. So let's come to Kuchura and Bakana because you also want to believe that the PNM in corruption and Bakana. Exactly, Celestine. The UNC could never stand in PNM shoes because they figure everybody corrupt like them. But PNM, I will tell you, the true PNM members are loyal to their party. Right? They're loyal to their party. And so this thing about you're using CPEP and URP to force people to come. Rubbish. Rubbish. Once there is anything, I let my executive know, listen, anything that if there is a meeting, Malabar Mausika must be represented. So when you hear them say, anybody here from Malabar Mausika, you must hear a loud chant. You must hear 2 or 3 voices. We must not be drowned out. That is the instruction I have given to my executive. Our constituency is to represent anything that the PNM has. And if it means that I as MP have to spend the money for the maxis, then so be it. We don't have any financiers that we could call on to say we need help with this and we need help with that. We don't have that. We have fundraisers. You know how many soup sales we have had in Malabar Mausika to raise funds? How many breakfasts? In fact, just last weekend, we had a breakfast sale. Right? People donate flour, they donate the saltfish and all of these different things so that we can have bacon, saltfish, pumpkin, melange, and these things. We have these things in my constituency. We don't have the benefit of any financiers to give us any money. Anyway, PNM was loyal until Rowley do Obi and Mane. And all shameless for that. All look at this. Really? That's how it is? But UNC remained loyal even though Kamala gave Mr. Pandey a swift kick and sent him packing. The founder of the party, right? Ill-treated him. Kick his daughter out of the party after she was a sitting MP. Went back up for screening and she was not selected. All of that happened. And then the UNC faithful remained loyal. On the night of election in 2015, general election, when the UNC lost, when the People's Partnership lost, and Kamala Prasad Bisesa decided she wasn't going to go to Rienzi complex to speak to the people there. Instead, she jumped in her car. I think they said PM1 was given some problems, and her sister pulled up in a red Toyota, and she jumped in the car and went home. And left her supporters in Rienzi complex waiting to at least hear from her some words of consolation. Didn't care. But you know what? The UNC faithful remained loyal to her, even in the face of that. Even in the face of that. But you want to come and tell me nonsense, but PNM was loyal until Rowley say he will go beyond Manning. Well, I will tell you, the fact that Brian Manning sat in Dr. Rowley's cabinet, okay, should tell you that even Mr. Manning's family would have forgiven that statement. Okay? Right. Well, let's come from with these things. Folks, I did say that I have 2 events to attend this afternoon, and it's already 3:12. So I think at this point I will take my leave. Brookman is saying the UNC feel PNM corrupt and like the thief like them. UNC is the inventor of corruption and thieving. Exactly. That's why the supporters could come here and raise all of these nonsense issues, but cannot provide a defense for the cancellation of the $3.4 billion contract. Can't. They say, but thief $2.6 billion. I read for you all last week an article which says that the Auditor General went to the central bank and she audited the electronic check clearing system, which she said she was prevented from doing when the PNM was in power. She was prevented from doing when Hilaire was there, and that prevented her from being able to make a definitive decision with respect to the 2.6 billion. Well, she went, she did it, she audited, and now nothing. 14 months later, how come the government not calling for Ember to be investigated? And the thief and the Privy Council said that Ember should be investigated. So how come the UNC not pursuing that? How come they not come into the Parliamentary without any mark? They come in to tell you who name was on our list, but nobody come in to tell you. Well, the Auditor General went to Central Bank and she audited the system, and it showed that that was a lie. And Ember said that is what caused you 2.6 billion, and that's a lie. And Ember thieved the 2.6 billion. 14 months later, you come in to tell us about secret list. You come in to make couture about tell us about something with TNTech wanted to sue Flavor Right and Scotland, but you can't come to tell us one of the biggest issues that helped you all to get into government, the claim that Ember thieved 2.6 billion. You've not been able to come and tell us one word about that. UNC really know who to fool. Mr. Manning was trying to uplift his community, but the damage done by Eric Williams was already done. That so not making any sense. It ain't funny. Because last I checked, Mr. You talking about, so when did Mr. Manning try to uplift his community? Mr. Manning was Prime Minister, just the same way Eric Williams was Prime Minister. Mr. Manning was Prime Minister from 1991, was it, to 1995? And then Prime Minister again from December 2001 till May 2010. And you are saying that he couldn't uplift his community because of the damage already done by Eric Williams. What damage was that? You all seem to forget that the PNM was in power for 30 unbroken years. You know why that was? Because the population kept voting for the PNM. The majority of the electorate kept voting for the PNM because they had confidence in the People's National Movement, the leadership of the People's National Movement, the policies and programs of the People's National Movement, where the population, the majority of the voters were satisfied with that for 30 unbroken years. So when you all like to come and talk about the PNM was in power for how much for most of the time, yeah, well, at least 30 years, the population said, we're happy with it. We have no problem with it. We endorse, we support what the PNM is doing. The PNM, I am not aware that in any of those times that the PNM said we were suspending elections. Nobody held a gun to any voter and said, hey, go and vote for the PNM. Otherwise, there were opposition forces that existed then, but the population was satisfied with the work that the PNM was doing and decided to continue to allow them to stay in government. That is why the PNM continues to be the only party that has been able to serve full successive terms in office. The only other party that came close to doing that was the UNC when they won the election in the year 2000, and they couldn't even last 1 year. And they fell under the weight of corruption. The majority of politicians who have come before the court in this country and who are still before the court, they have come from the House of the Rising Sun, the UNC. For all these allegations you all make about PNM and PNM thief and O'Halloran and Privat and who not and who not. To talk about PNM corruption, you all had to go back 50 years, 5 decades, as if the PNM has not been in office since then. You want to talk? Tell us about 91 to 95. Why don't you go back and talk about corruption then? Because you can't. We were in office from 2001 to 2010. Go back and talk corruption then. Or let's say call the heart thief billions of dollars and all of that. Rode into election with that lie and then came into office, and for 5 years, 3 months and 14 days, no effort was made by the UNC government to go after Calder Hart, whether from a criminal perspective, whether from a civil perspective, as the PNM did when they went after Ish and Steve. And today, Steve is supposed to be paying the state over $1 billion in compensation because the PNM went after him. 14 months. Have you heard anything from this current Attorney General as to the status of that matter? You were hearing about it all the time under the PNM. But you UNC supporters didn't care about that. You don't care if it is the case is being sabotaged. Well, the case was over. It's just for us to know. But we are hearing that the legal team that the PNM would have hired to prosecute that case has been fired by this Attorney General. And no discussion about that. None. At the end of the day, as it was said before, the UNC has no moral authority to talk about the PNM. None. All right? Because they have no big project. Imagine the PNM built the whole waterfront project. The whole waterfront project. They built government campus across the road, all these buildings. And you didn't hear not any allegation about any government minister getting any kickback and any brown bag and so on. The only thing I talk about was called the heart and say called the heart thief and called the heart thief. Calder had never see the inside of a police station in this country. He never see silver bracelets, nothing. Police never questioned him after the UNC prosecuted that case in the court of public opinion. Never went after the man and allowed all those so-called billions they say he thief to go. They went all the way to Malaysia. Timothy Hamel-Smith and Vernon Dilema to say they getting information to prove that the director that called the Hart's brother-in-law was a director on Sunway Construction, which was one of the companies that got contracts to build the waterfront and the government campus and Prime Minister's residence and diplomatic center. Just imagine that, but only build one little airport, corruption galore, all kind of thing. Only come with a live sport program, corruption galore. Anyway, it's Eric Williams who made sure they went to school because their girl children were denied education. So true, they will never admit. Plenty of them who talking rubbish now are beneficiaries of the PNM education. Let's see. Jimmy saying, I want to know if Mamu is back in the country, the wastewater man, them men have no shame. Don't worry, soon enough you'll probably hear that name mentioned. They ain't going after these people. Jenny says MP Romain called the heart, tell them to come for him. He tell them where he was. Why they didn't exactly when the media asked Anna Ram Logan, so what is going on with called the heart? And with respect to the claims made that he stole how much money. And Ram Logan said, we are aware, we know where Mr. Hart is, and when we are ready for him, we know where to find him. It seems in the 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days they were there, they were never ready for Mr. Hart. They've been back in office for 14 months, and it seems they're no longer interested in Mr. Hart. So all the billions, they say he thief. But they wanted to tell you, Manning thief a piano. That was right in the diplomatic center. Right? It was right there at the bandstand. Right hiding behind the draperies. Also, Manning thief, where the piano go on, we want to know. And when they find the piano right where Mr. Manning told them it was, they come back and say, well, we never said that he stole it. You know, we were just saying that we couldn't find it and we wanted assistance. Manning, they say Manning take taxpayers' money to build a church for Juliana Pena in Guanapo. Right? They allowed the church to be, the building to be vandalized and so on. The Integrity Commission did the investigation and found no such things happened. No state money was used. But Manning thief and Manning this and Manning that. Now some of these same dishonest people come and tell you, you know, Patrick Manning was a statesman. Yeah, I was talking to a minister of government just this week, and they tell me, you know, Patrick Manning was a statesman, and he was the quintessential politician. He was a gentleman. Well, they're speaking highly of Mr. Manning now, but 2010 general election, Manning must go. Palace state of mind. Patrick Manning have to go. Manning this, Manning thief. Or they put a big billboard with Manning just as Idi Amin. Nothing good. Do so. Remember that when Manning come in here, yeah, do so. But today, the same Patrick Manning that you all vilified in 2010, today he's a statesman and he's a gentleman. And Patrick Manning was one of those politicians, you know, he was a politician extraordinaire, all kind of big talk. Me and all it. Patti Kudu says the whole of Trinidad and Tobago developed under the PNM. UNC only undeveloped the treasury. So true. So true. Reason 24 says not an ounce of honesty. Not an ounce of honesty about what? You just come in and making wild statements, say certain nonsense about PNM people were loyal until Dr. Rowley say whatever. That's why Dr. Rowley could still go anywhere, any PNM function, and they mention the name of our former Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, and the whole crowd will go up in uproar because they still have that respect for him, regardless of what he may have said on the campaign trail. Right? The Manning family would have forgiven him for whatever he said. And these are things that are said in the cut and thrust of politics. But you all want to hold on to that. It would say he increased gas once, twice, and they didn't riot yet, so you increase it a third time. But tax could tell all you, yes, move. If your landlord increase your rent, you couldn't care about the inconvenience of having to move. You having to go and search to find a new place. And if it means uprooting your children from the school they're going to and inconveniencing you, so what? Move. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to back down on this surcharge. This landlord surcharge is coming. And therefore, if your landlord increase your fees, your rent, just move. The bank increase their fees, go to the credit union because it's so easy. And but no talk about that. It's unfortunate. They have to sign the book to get paid. Who are you talking about? Who has to sign book to get paid? What book you talking about? Who? You have a problem talking about people who were loyal to the PNM was loyal until last 2 weeks. Munilal come in the parliament and say that the PNM wrap up 10 vagrants in a jersey, in a white jersey, and send them on the promenade in the Quasi. Right? Loyal people again. I gave instructions. I was not there because I had to do a procedure on my eye that day, and I was not able to. My vision would have been blurred for about 8 to 12 hours, so I couldn't attend. But I gave instructions to my executive. Malabar Mausika must be represented. Make sure and get the maxis and get the people, because people messaging me and asking, MP, will transportation be provided for those of us who want to go down to the Quasi? Yes, organize it. We not to pay anybody. We have no money to pay anybody. But you're like that stupid talk. If the UNC wasn't paying people to go to these rallies and so on, I personally know people who said that who are not even politically inclined, but they just looking to eat our food and they hear the UNC paying people. So hey, we get a jersey and some money and we go on. Any port for a storm. PNM in office 70 years, and why Port of Spain looks so. I had to hold my nose anytime I come into Port of Spain. PNM was not in office for 70 years. Oh gosh, get your numbers correct now. Get your numbers correct now. The PNM is only 50. The PNM was born in 1956. The party is 70 years old, but we were not in power for 70 years. We were not in power for 70 years. We were in power for about what? Maybe 49, 51 years or so. The UNC had 11 years. 6 under Pandey, 5 under Kamla. That's 11, and now they've had a further 14 months. So 12. And then you had the NAR. But 5, 17. So we would have been in power for 53, not 70 as you say. Ease us up with the lies now. I'm talking about why Port of Spain. Have you been to, so when you go to Shogunas, you could just breathe in fresh air, right? And have you been to Shogunas lately? When was the last time you went to Siparia? All of these constituencies are under the UNC. Nonsense. Ah, boy. Only 50-something years, but we couldn't help black. Who is we? You are PNM? But we couldn't help black people. You know, it's people like you also who like to put down African people on. That's all their problem. That's all their problem. But we couldn't help. Did you look for help? Did you look for help? When it is under the last administration, all the things that they had in place, you see, because you also like to take in what nonsense that UNC supporters talk and that the UNC leadership talks about, that you wouldn't see. I spoke last week about all the efforts that the PNM made when Mr. Manning wanted to fix East Port of Spain, East Dry River, Duncan Street, Nelson Street, all of these, the plannings, as they call it, when he wanted to do over all of those buildings. And the UNC tell these people, reject the PNM. Because why? They're just trying to move you all so they could break down your homes and put up high rises for the 1%. It's probably people like you also who was supporting that nonsense and sharing that dotish talk. Mr. Manning built Victoria Kircher, who low-income families, so that they could live in an upscale neighborhood. What did the UNC do when they came into office? They said, nah, that's too good for all here. We are going to turn these into high-end apartments. All of these things that you all don't see, the PNM established a whole Ministry of Youth Development and National Service. When it is they were going all over the country with the caravan, because they say, listen, if the young people are not coming to the programs, we are going to go through the country with this caravan and we will sign them up for the programs. When Mr. Manning established the UTT, Kamla Prasad Bisesa and the UNC said, we don't need another university. What is the point of wasting taxpayers' money to establish this UTT for? And we have UE, and we have so many private tertiary level education institutions. We don't need UTT. John Donaldson, who established that? Not the PNM. The Lavantil Institute right there by the old Rambon in Lavantil, in Lavantil, there opposite Beetham. Who established that? Wasn't that the PNM that did all of these things? The youth camp, MyLat, MyPart, all of these things that the PNM created to help the same persons of African descent. But all these things you all are blind to, will never speak to that fact. When the UNC shut down the CCC, all of these things, the youth camps and all of that, when they shut it down and the PNM was creating opportunities, the Youth in Agriculture Homestead program where they were creating the next generation of farmers, making agriculture sexy again, according to Mariano Brown. The state was paying for these young people to go to the university and learn agriculture and giving them money to start their business, giving them a starter home, giving them land. Why will you all not give the PNM credit for these things? Only coming to talk rubbish about the African community. When it is every week, as a member of parliament, persons from the African community coming to me, and not just them, persons from the East Indian community coming to tell me they want a job in the corporation. That's all they want. And if you offer them some other type of employment, the excuse is, well, they have their kids and they want to make sure that they're home when the children reach home because they had to cook and they had to pick up the children from school. So they really, all they want is a job in the corporation. Because in their minds, corporation, you go to work at 7 o'clock and by 9 o'clock you're back home. That's what they want. And then they get paid at the end of the fortnight or whatever it is. How do you change that mindset? You want to blame the PNM for that? Look, miss me with that nonsense. The PNM created CPEP so that the same persons of African descent who could give them an opportunity to start a business. You come, you're a contractor, you get a contract for 2 years, you do your thing, you make some money, and then you use some of that money to go on to establish a business. All of these things the PNM did. You all wouldn't give them credit for that. Well, the PNM for over 70 years and what they do. Ah, boy. I will never take you seriously, host. Well, there's one thing we could agree on. I made the mistake of taking you seriously and responding to your nonsense. And you see, when you can't defend your idiotic statements, that is what you would say. Right? But I apologize to my other listeners for taking you seriously and entertaining the garbage that you have come here today to put on my life, that you cannot defend. You cannot defend. Because the UNC has been in power for 14 months. They were in power between 2010 and 2015. Tell me one thing they did for the African community. Or is it because they don't draw their support from the African community, they are not expected to do anything? They were in power from 95 to 2001. What did they do for the African community? Tell me. What have they done for the last 14 months? We know what they did in terms of negative. They took away jobs from these people. What have they done to help them? Other than label them collateral damage. Tell me one thing they did to help the African community now. Do your comparison. All the things that I just mentioned to you that the PNM did, you come and tell me now what the UNC has done in the 6 years under Pandey, the 5 years under Kamla Prasad Bisesa, and now in the last 14 months. Tell me one thing they did to uplift the African community. You can't tell me. You know why? Because they did absolutely nothing. Regardless of who is in government, they have a responsibility to every single citizen. And what people like you will not admit is that every time the PNM attempted to do something that was specifically designed for persons in the African community, and the evidence is there to show, the UNC always quick to run to the Equal Opportunities Commission and run to the courthouse and claim discrimination. And more often than not, these institutions would agree with them. When the PNM established the scholarship fund that people like Laurel Azama and stuff benefited from, you know what the UNC said? It was a Manning created a slush fund for people of African descent. Where were you all to defend Mr. Manning in that? No, well, they clapped the UNC and supported that foolishness. But you still can't tell me one thing that the UNC has done to help the African community. And again, you see, folks, I will just permit me just to respond to this last comment before I leave, right? Because this individual is wasting my time. Hear what he says. What Rowley said, wean yourself off the government. Again, when you all come with your uninformed commentary, you know why Dr. Rowley said that? If you had listened to the entire clip and not the piece that the UNC fed you, and he was saying that in that particular financial year, when the government read the budget, he said he was reading the newspapers and he saw where a certain businessman wrote an article talking about the government needed to provide more of a stimulus package for the business community. And Dr. Rowley was making the point that the business community figured that the government must do everything. So every road, every school to build, everything is the government and the government and the government and the business community. And he was making specific reference to that article that the gentleman wrote in the newspaper, chastising the government for not having a stimulus package, not providing incentives or enough incentives for the business community to be able to expand. He was saying they were advocating for the state to use, the government to use taxpayers' money to provide incentives for the business community. And that is when he said, you better wean off the government. He was speaking to that individual and persons of like minds, business owners who feel that the government needed to provide them with a stimulus package. But you'd never listen to the whole clip. You never took the time. All you listened to was what the UNC put out. And you figure, here, Rowley say, wean yourself off the government. And you listening to stupid talk from the UNC and wouldn't inform yourself. And then come in here to talk that nonsense. Listen to me. I don't talk anything here unless I do my research. All right? I do my research because I anticipate people like you will come here and talk that nonsense. So when all they like to say, Rowley say, who live, live, and who dead, dead. Many times I hear them repeating that nonsense in the parliament. And I have spoken to that issue here on more than one occasion. The circumstances in which Dr. Rowley said that when the government at the time was contemplating implementing policy that public servants needed to take the COVID vaccine, otherwise they would be furloughed. Because they're saying those who took the vaccine want to come out to work, and it is not fair to expose them to people who didn't take the vaccine, who might come and probably contract COVID and then come and endanger the lives of those who took the vaccine. When the government said they were contemplating, because they never enforced that policy, same Ansel Roger and the OWTU came out and said that that decision on whether or not you should take the vaccine should be left to choice. That if you want to take it, take it. And who don't want to take it, well, then that's the business. Let the chips fall where they may. That is what Roger and they said. And Dr. Rowley was speaking at an event, and he referenced that. And he said, the position of the union, the OWTU, is who live, live, and who dead, dead. In other words, they're saying, leave it up to the citizens, leave it up to the workers if they want to take it or not, and who live, live, who dead, dead. If they don't take it and they get the COVID and they die, that's their business. And if they take it and they are protected from the COVID, great. He was characterizing what the union said. Who live, their position is who live, live, but who dead, dead. The UNC come and talk a pack of rubbish, but Rowley say who live. You all have no idea when it was said, the context in which it was said, but coming to run with it and Rowley say who live, live, and who dead, dead. I had to pull up Saddam Hussein in the members' lounge when he used that term a couple of days ago. I tell him, I said, I'm only real dishonest. The context. He said, then when he couldn't defend that, he jumped out and said, the rich must get richer. I said, Dr. Rowley never said that. He said there is not that, what his exact words were, there is nothing wrong with the rich getting richer, but the poor must come out of poverty, because when the rich get richer, they create opportunities for the poor. But because most of you all only see the only opportunities the rich could create for the poor as normal, regular work, low income, right? Menial work. You all don't see all the other opportunities that are created from that. And all they run with that. Rowley say the rich must get richer. Anyway. I'm still waiting for you, Reason 424, to tell me one thing, just one, that the UNC has done for the African community, either from 95 to 2001, 2010 to 2015, or for the last 14 months. Just one thing. You see all this dribble you're talking here, all this garbage, this refuse, you're wasting my time. Tell me one thing that they have done in any of their incarnations in government to help the African community that you claim to be speaking for and to be concerned about. All I hear this one, he says used cars. Used cars for the African community. In other words, he's saying the African community can't buy new cars. So when Mr. Pandey and his administration took the decision to introduce the used car industry and so on, they did that specifically. They said this is to benefit Africans. Yes, we're doing this to benefit the African community. You hearing that idiocy? That's the only thing you could have come up with? So for the Africans who can't afford to buy a new car, regardless of whether it's foreign use or whatever local use, what did they do for them? For them. How did used car industry uplift the African community? Look, the man say laptops are 100 schools. Well, you see, every time you talk that 100 schools nonsense, let me educate you again. Go on the Parliament channel, pull up, I think it was the 19th of May, no, May 2019. Pull up all the videos on the Parliament channel from May of 2019. You go into the media review and scroll until you see the presentation by Anthony Garcia, then Minister of Education, and listen to his presentation. And he will read out for you all the schools that the UNC claimed that they built, which they did not build. All the schools that was started under the Manning administration prior to the general election of 2010 when the UNC came in, and those schools were already under construction. The schools finished under them and they took responsibility for it. And you will see that your 106 schools that you're referring to will actually boil down to about 59 schools. Let me see what other nonsense you're talking about there. Yes, no. You see, sometimes it's good to educate them because they don't know any better. 106 schools, laptops. All right, let me help you with that. Hold 1 second. Yes, no. Let me give you some assistance. So, apparently you don't know. You're uninformed. And I like to educate those of you who are uninformed. I'm going to read this for you, Mr. Reason 424. Ministry of Education release dated September 5th, 2023. Dear editor and heads of departments, 71,000 laptops and tablets distributed to teachers and students from 2020 to 2023. Over the last 3 years, the Ministry of Education has distributed a total of 71,000 laptops and tablets to students and teachers throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Today, Tuesday, 5th September 2023, the distribution of a further 8,000 laptops to principals of both students and teachers in their respective schools commenced. The distribution process continues until Monday, 18th September 2023, during which time principals of over 500 primary and secondary schools are scheduled to collect devices. Dr. The Honorable Nian Gatsby-Dolly, speaking on the distribution, said, in today's learning environment, a digital device is a necessary tool to support academic success. Digital access is a critical thread in the fabric of Trinidad and Tobago's educational transformation. Well, say have 71,000 or 79,000 laptops, because 71 plus 8, 79,000 in 3 years. It took Kamla 5 years to distribute 95,000. What else you have? Huh? What else you have? No wonder I was misled. No, you are misled, sir. Because everything that you have thrown at me I have been able to rebut. And when the only thing you could tell me that the UNC has done in over 12 years to uplift the African community is use cars, first thing that came to your mind, laptops, 106 schools, you're proven wrong there. If I had the time, I would play it for you so you could hear Anthony Garcia rubbish that. And when he was finished speaking, the only thing, every time while he's talking, and he called out a school, Tim Gopi Singh, who was the Minister of Education at the time, when he called in, yeah, and calling out the name of the contractor. Yeah, I'll get contract. He couldn't get up. Nobody got up after Anthony Garcia to refute what he said. Nobody. So if anybody is being misled, sir, you are doing so deliberately. I don't have time to read all your comments because me reading all your comments, it's just a waste of time. I will debunk everything that you have said. Hey boy. Another one jump on Errol Book. The UNC gave us water in Carenage in Scorpion. Okay. You getting water now? How has the water been? Your supply of water, how has it been? I can tell you in my constituency for the last 14 months, it's been the worst it's ever been. Worst it's ever been. I can tell you in Diego Martin, Northeast, Diego Martin Central, Diego Martin West, which is the constituency that you are a part of. We are hearing from persons that it is the worst it has ever been. That's all. Boy, let me see. Ali Lewis is saying the reason 424, you certainly didn't apply yourself to the free education available. Ali, these are just, I realize, PNM haters. As I said earlier, it is cognitive dissonance. When they have held on to a belief based that has been created by the UNC that the PNM is the worst thing ever. Eric Williams is the worst thing ever. They like to talk about the 2 oil boom that the country went through under the PNM, and we should be looking like Dubai and all that foolishness. Never mind the fact that when we went through the so-called oil boom, the price of oil was about $9-10 a barrel back then. And we never had the type of production that Dubai and Saudi Arabia and stuff had. When we producing 200,000 barrels of oil per day and they're producing 1 million barrels plus. But they expected that we're supposed to look like Dubai. That's the stupid talk. The reason Jenny is saying the reason 424 gets so, he had to work hard to show them he's doing something, otherwise he ain't gonna get the 300. So true, Jenny. Let me tell you what they did for the you all like to accuse the PNM of creating a dependency syndrome. Really? But when the UNC came with their live sport, when I was campaigning last year, imagine you have people telling me when anti-cams was there, at least I was getting my $1,500 a month, right? I was eating our food again, $1,500. And this is a young man telling me that, right? That's what they did. That's how you culture these young men to believe that government means just get them free money. You getting $1,500 a month and lunch, breakfast and lunch every day. And he wanted that to come back. But guess what? At the time, when I was campaigning, he was telling me that, you know where he was working? CPEP. Today, not only is he not getting $1,500 and breakfast and lunch from anti-cam, she took away the $2,000 and something that he was getting under CPEP. That's what she did for the African community. Let me tell you what else UNC did for the African community. All of these mothers that I've spoken about, who unfortunately have to be selling themselves to feed their children, that's what the UNC gave them. You know what else they give them? Color me orange. Baby grant $500 a month to make child. Let us increase the dependency. So rather than encourage you to do something constructive, create opportunities like the 50-something programs the PNM had under the Ministry of Youth Development, no, they tell them, well, you just go and lie down and make child. Don't be responsible, be irresponsible. And once after the 9 months and you make the child, come and apply to the Ministry of Social Welfare and the people, and we will give you a grant for $500 a month to buy milk and Pampers for the child. That's what they did. You know what they did? Kamala took them to the Hilton for the launch of Color Me Orange and send police, riot police, when they showed up. The people from Lavantil and East Port of Spain and Beaterman Shore, when they showed up at the Hilton, they had a set of police officers in riot gear prepared to meet the never see come see. You know, because apparently they're not accustomed to Hilton. So, yeah. And then put them in the hole and telling them hands up, out, down. That's what she did for persons of African descent. That's what they did. You know what they did else? They launched in 2011, they had a state of emergency and arrested thousands of young black men and held them for months without charge, ruined their lives, caused them to lose their jobs, and then released them just as they did that gentleman who complaining now and send them, well, here what? You're under charge all you on. Hard luck there. And send them out. No jobs. What do you expect them to do? Not turn to crime? That's what the UNC did. But people like you wouldn't understand. Well, it's not that you don't understand. You're just being smart with foolishness. Isaac Trini says, good afternoon, Mr. Romain. Blessings to you. Mr. Warner was right when he said the PNM is blessed to have you. Thank you so much. Kerwin Henderson is saying, if Dunce doing more for PNM areas, why they're not doing, why they're doing nothing for Dunce areas? And that is so true. That's so true. Ask reason 424. Ask him. You feel it's only PNM people lost work in CPEP and URP? No. A lot of their own supporters who are struggling now. Imagine I am getting calls from constituencies like Siparia, constituencies as far as Oropuch East, calling my office to ask for help because they reached out to the UNC MP and they're telling them, well, they can't help them right now, right? But they see on my Facebook page where we helping people, where I would have gone out to some homes, we got some hampers and I went to people's homes to deliver the hampers to them. And they are seeing that and reaching out to me to ask me if I could assist them with a hamper. And they live in a constituency where their MP is a minister of government, but coming to ask an opposition MP for help. If something is wrong with that, I don't know what is. And Deborah is asking, is it only African people who live in Karanan? She isn't understanding the question. Clearly, PNM don't have balls to get 60,000 workers to join a march. To get 60,000 workers to join a march for what? So are you admitting that UNC fired 60,000 workers? So should we get them to come? Let me leave you with this. On the day that the Indian Prime Minister came to this country, when he addressed the joint parliamentary session, CPEP and URP workers and forestry workers assembled in Port of Spain. We call them out. And they assembled in front of the City Hall. After the session, all 13 of us went outside to meet them. We had a discussion, right? The political leader, the opposition leader at the time spoke to them and whatnot and so on. And we decided we're going and make one lap around Woodford Square. Just one, right? As we started to advance west along Knox Street in the vicinity of the Hall of Justice, to make our way just to make one lap single file around the Woodford Square, the riot police in full riot gear came out of the bus and they formed a barricade across the street, ready with their baton and so on to share licks if we had gone beyond that point. We went under SOE at that time, right? But they came prepared to share some licks. So you advocating for us to organize 60,000. You see what happened to Alyssa Phillip and the small group that she had? She make a jail. You feel if we apply to the Commissioner of Police for a march of 60,000 people that they will grant it? You think this government want that embarrassment? You want us to call out people for the police to come and beat them, bust up their head and so on, and then for Kamala to come and say, look at what the PNM doing. Look at how they have people being injured by the police. And they're promoting civil unrest. You feel we stupid? We understand strategy, you all would love for us to do that. For citizens to get their head bust up and to make a jail. And then saying, where the PNM lawyers to represent the people, and is all you call them out? You feel you will give us any kudos if we do that? No, not at all. Total opposite. The PNM irresponsible. Look what they do. They bring all the people and make the people get beat up and all of that. And they should pay their legal bills and they should pay the lawyer fees. We have strategy. You don't worry. See how unpatriotic the PNM is. You wait for a foreign delegation to come to protest. Disgraceful. All right. And again, if you had any common sense, right? When did the UNC shut down the CPEP program? It was in the same month, and as a matter of fact, it was announced a mere week or so before the Prime Minister came. Okay? It was announced a week before. And what better way than to highlight, because the Indian Prime Minister is here. These are the things. So there would have been international media here, and we wanted to highlight for the world to see what this wicked government was doing to the poorest of the poor in this country. And what better coverage to get when the Indian Prime Minister is here, and you have the Indian media here and other media houses from across the world who were here to cover that event. Let them see what this wicked government is doing. But you wouldn't understand political strategy, and you calling that unpatriotic. No, wait till there is no international cameras and we can just keep it in the country. Right. Sure. Hannah is saying PNM never have to pay for people to join any march. Here this land, PNM wins, lose or draw. Exactly. Right? 2010 to 2015, when we had the Section 34 march, we didn't have to pay anybody to come and march. 2010 to 2015, when citizens from across the political divide, even UNC supporters and all, were marching from Shagaramas to the waterfront to protest state lands, Arab prime real estate being given away to the 1% by the Kamala Prasad Sessa government. We didn't have to pay anybody. People came out willingly. You are a traitor to your country. You don't even know the meaning of traitor. You are a traitor to your race is what you are. You are an embarrassment to yourself. Coming here to talk a pack of nonsense and can't defend anything that you want to see. Right? All this rubbish that you're putting out here, can't defend it. Miss me with that nonsense. Chelsea, I do have a hard job with these UNC sycophants. The PNM could come and hand him $1 million and he will still cost the PNM while he's receiving it. They'll say things, why I didn't give this one and give that one. Some people are just beyond help. Right? Imagine everything that he called out to tell me that the UNC did for persons of Africa. And he said he can't tell me nothing they did in the last 14 months. He wouldn't come here to complain about all the people who lost their jobs. No, he wouldn't talk about that. Wouldn't talk about that at all. All the public servants whose contracts are not being renewed, he wouldn't come and talk about that. All the businesses that have closed down, some of which are African owned, he come in here to say he defending Africans, but wouldn't talk about that, but come in to talk rubbish for me. Party is saying, I want to believe UNC would borrow money to pay back pay close to the election. Party, they're hoping money will come from the energy sector. They're hoping money will come from Lauren Manatee, and money will come from Dragon and Kokina Mannequin, right? The government share of the monies from the gas that will go to Atlantic LNG, the 10% shareholding, and that they will use that to bribe people. But what they fail to understand, because you pay 10%, but that is not the end of it, because they still have another bargaining period to settle for, and then they will have another one coming up as well. I think they have 2 bargaining periods that they have to set. So when you establish a base of 10%, are you always going to continue to make it 10% till it gets to the point where the state is unable to sustain that level of salary for so many people? And you say, well, we will do it in the hope that we'll get another 5 years. And then when you can't sustain that HR bill or that salary bill, you know what they're going to do? Send home people. Because you can't cut the people's salaries unless you want to do like what the NAR did, cut COLA, the 10% cut and all of that. But they know that is, if they do that, that will be the end of the UNC. So what do? You send home people. When the contract time comes for the contracts to not be renewed, you simply say, well, we're not renewing it, and that's that. Next week, I'll tell you, we will talk about that Petrotrin close. I sick and fed up of hearing about it too. What are you going to do? Chelsea Blue is saying the new generation doesn't know history. When Chinese historically get fed up in this country, it is not a nice sight to see. So true. Says, I swear that Stuart Young is the only one with a living IQ in the opposition. Well, clearly you have no IQ whatsoever. None. Because where were you when Stuart Young, where are you to defend when Stuart Young told the population all the things UNC would do? How much of it has come to pass? So much of it has come. Where were you to come and defend? You have not said one thing about this UNC government, one negative thing. You come in to chastise the PNM to defend UNC foolishness. I mean, you have the IQ of a rock, and even that is an insult to rocks everywhere. I mean, I don't normally block people, because I allow you all to commit your nonsense so I can debunk it and show up your, hold up a mirror to your stupidity. But right now, you're really testing my patience. Gary Aboud did an FOIA and it showed that the PNM stopped subventions to Petrotrin since 2016. Well, if I had any doubt as to your IQ level, that removed all doubt. Here what he says. Gary Aboud did an FOIA and it showed that the PNM stopped subventions to Petrotrin since 2016. Well, as a UNC supporter, you should be that should be a feather in your cap, right? Because you always say that Petrotrin was making money. Why would the government provide subventions to a company that is making money and making profits? And you all said that up until its closure in 2018, that they made 1.6 billion in profits. That's what Kamala said last week. The government doesn't provide subventions to a company that making profit. Do you understand the economics, the basics? Does the government provide subventions to NGC? No, because NGC is making billions. Does the government provide subventions to NLCD? No, because the NLC is making billions. You don't provide subventions to companies that making billions. It is companies that are not making money that you provide subventions to. And you all said they were making money. So why are you complaining now that they stopped subventions since 2016? You know why these subventions were stopped? Because Petrotrin was not paying its taxes. They were withholding their taxes from the government. And the government said, well, since you all owe us these billions of dollars in taxes and you're not paying it, then why are we going to provide you with financial support when you are withholding monies that is due to the central government? Go and do your research before coming here and talking rubbish. How many times you're going to post a comment to embarrass yourself? Ah, boy. Folks, Horace Shotness is saying, I want a program on why the UNC don't want CCJ as the final court of appeal. Horace, we will discuss that too. He come not the Malcolm Jones $13 billion loan. What Malcolm Jones $13 billion loan. Ah, boy. Here what to do. I need you to go and Google, all right, arbitration, WGTL St. Lucia versus Petrotrin. Okay? Go and Google that. You will have the whole transcript of that arbitration proceedings and what was the final outcome of that. Okay? Go and read that. I don't have the time to educate you on that this afternoon. Come now, Stuart Young was Malcolm Jones's lawyer. Stuart Young was a member of cabinet at the time that the decision was taken to withdraw the Malcolm Jones lawsuit. Therefore, he could not have been Malcolm Jones's lawyer at that time because he would have had to put down all briefs because he was a minister of government. Okay, that would have been a conflict of interest. So even when the cabinet was discussing any matters with respect to that issue, if at some previous point in time Stuart Young was Malcolm Jones's attorney, he would have had to recuse himself from any such discussions because Malcolm Jones was his former client. You understand? But you all made it seem as if recusals was a sin. Oh, Stuart Young recused himself how much, 90-something times, and Faris recused himself. But it's for situations such as that. But you all made it seem as if that was a sin for him to recuse himself because a matter is being discussed that involved his former client. What else you have? What else you have? You want me to tell you why it is they decided to withdraw the Malcolm Jones case? I've said it before and I'll tell you again. There were two pieces of evidence that Malcolm Jones was relying on for his defense in that matter. One was the outcome of the same arbitration that I just told you to go and research, in which WGTL lost, and the arbitration panel found that WGTL, it was because of them that the project failed. One, and two, the witness statements of two former Petrotrin directors, one Mr. Chantak and one Ms. Batiste. Those two witness statements, which would Malcolm Jones, which would have exonerated Malcolm Jones. Those two pieces of evidence were not provided to Vincent Nelson and Russell Martino, who were retained by the state to give an opinion on whether or not the state should pursue a case against Malcolm Jones. Right? It was only when the PNM came back into office in 2015, and then the matter was still ongoing, that the cabinet would have sought another opinion. And that those two pieces of information, which Malcolm Jones was asking for and requesting to be provided to his defense team so that they could use that in the case, when these two pieces of information was provided to both Mr. Nelson and Mr. Martino, both of them indicated it was never provided to them before. And had it been provided to them, their advice to the People's Partnership would have been different. They would have told them a case against Malcolm Jones based on this would not be successful. It would be a waste of taxpayers' money. Do not sue Malcolm Jones. Up to now, the People's Partnership have never been able to tell you why they didn't provide those two pieces of information to those two attorneys as the PNM did. But we know why. Because they wanted a particular opinion. They wanted to say we got legal counsel from Queen's Counsel and then Queen's Counsel and Senior Counsel telling us that a case against Malcolm Jones would have been successful. So they could then, well, at least one of the attorneys could then charge significant legal fees and we will get a kickback. What else you need to know? I tell you, I don't come and talk thing here that I don't know about. You're not ready for this dance. Stop commenting and embarrassing yourself. Hey boy, and I didn't plan to stay here this long, you know. Yes, he's a distraction. I done with him for today. I done with him for today. There we say no, Vincent Nelson says Stuart Young approached him. Ah boy. You need help, yes? We will deal with that article on another day. All right? Reason 424? Because you are clearly in need of education. Who told you that Vincent Nelson said that? Kamla? Munilal? Ah, boy. Jenny says, I hope you're screenshotting your comments so that you could get your phone card and data plan. Work. Yes, Jenny, that's exactly what it is. Now you're saying, you need a spine. You need a brain. Clearly, you don't have one. You need common sense. Clearly, you don't have that either. And most of all, you need a life or a wife. Folks, we will chat again next week. All right, God's willing. Let me, I'm already late for one of my events. All right? Now he's resorting to personal attacks that Johnny is still broke. Is it when he reached down there? Yeah. What's that saying? That's the argument is lost when your opponent resorts to personal insults. That's when they've thrown in the towel. He has nothing else that he could throw here because everything he has thrown so far has been debunked, which highlights his ignorance. So now he decided to commit personal attacks. Ah, boy. Oh, Lord. Yeah, how's the family on Wiles Road? I have no family on Wiles Road. Okay? I simply bank with Bank of America on Wiles Road. I have an account there. But I have no family on Wiles Road. What else you have? Come better than that. How pathetic. Sigh. Even my own personal business and all you getting wrong, pal. Come now, man. I have family, well, not family. My family has property in Coral Springs. And Wiles Road is in Coral Springs, but it's not on Wiles Road. Okay? Poor soul. You have to have papers to bank in Bank of America. Really? All right. Hold 1 sec. That's not, huh? Give me 1 second. I come in. Hold that thought. I come in just now. Let me leave you with this. Let me help you out. See this? See what it says there? What does that say? Bank of America. That's mine. I won't turn it around for you because you might see my bank, you'll see my credit card number and you know I don't trust all you. So I'm gonna help you with it. Hold on. Let me give you again. See this? What does that say? See that? Bank of America. You good? Okay. Again, highlighting you don't know what you're talking about. Not a clue. I have no papers. Right? None. Reason 424, you don't know what you're talking about. I do not have any dual citizenship. Clearly you, Lordy. You don't need to have dual citizenship. You don't need papers to open an account with Bank of America. When I opened my account, at that time, they used to allow persons from other countries to open accounts. Now, you require they want to see some proof of address. Okay? It's not now I have that account. You so want to be all up in my business. Mind yours. And in case you want to know, yes, the Integrity Commission is aware that I have an account with Bank of America. Okay? Every year when I file my integrity and public life declaration, it is there. What else you want to know? Eh, boy. Oh boy. So you have to move money. Move what money? You could get US dollars in Trinidad? How are you doing that? So let me help you out again, since you want to be in my business. You see this? Guess what? Every time you come on here to look at me, YouTube pays me. What else you want to know? So I'm glad when you come here, people like you and the rest of you all who like to come and watch every week, because there are other things you could have gone and listen to, but you come on here. When you drive up my numbers, YouTube pays me. Right. So don't forget to subscribe and like, please. That also helps me too. Okay? And encourage your friends and other UNC trolls to also like, subscribe, and share. Because the more of you that support me and the more subscribers I have, is the more YouTube will pay me now. What else you want to know? Oh, Larry. Ooh. Content. So let me give you a little peek. You see there? You see that? 3,990 subscribers. Okay? This is the YouTube studio. All right. So they do these things. All right. So you see, sometimes if you go back, even after I end this live, and you try to look at it in a few days, and you might see ads come up, guess what? YouTube pays me for that too. They want me to generate content for them so that I could drive advertisement revenue to the platform, and then they pay me a portion of that revenue. Okay? What else you want to know? So maybe you should start your own YouTube channel, but you need to have a certain amount of followers, a certain amount of subscribers, and a certain amount of hours, viewership hours. So this is why sometimes I talk for this long. Okay? Because it adds up. You should just go and do your research. Just type in AdSense, YouTube AdSense, and you'll get all the information that you need from right there. Okay? Don't worry, the next check that I get from YouTube, if I care to, I'll probably come on here and show you. Okay? So Slimy is asking how you monetize some channel. So Slimy is very easy. Once you satisfy the requirements in order for you to monetize your platform. So then when you go into they give you the options of how you wish to get paid. Right? So all you have to do is you can choose to have the money sent directly to a bank account, but if you do that, they will pay you in TT hours. If you want to get paid in US dollars, you can simply say that you want to be paid by check, and they will mail you a US check. Comes in email. Yeah? And when I travel, I just deposit it. Right. Reason 424 here, what? If you want to open an account with Bank of America, I have links. All right? I will tell you the same branch on Wiles Road in Coral Springs. Next time you're up that way, assuming you have a visa, go to that branch on Wiles Road and ask for Helen Garbott. She is the branch manager. Just go there and ask for her. And just mention my name, and you'll get through. Easy like that. All you need is your passport and a US address. Okay? Nothing else. Okay? I'll help you out there. Just go there. Oh boy. Well, I don't know how you're saying Trini can't monetize, because I monetize. Pastor Google monetizes as well. I told you what to do. You must have a certain amount of subscribers in order to be able to and you must have at least 4,000 viewership hours, and you must have, I can't remember, I think it's at least 1,000 subscribers or something like that. And then once you satisfy that, then you have to go onto the AdSense and you put in your request. They would then review your platform. They would look at your content, and they would make sure that you satisfy the requirements in terms of viewership hours, and as well as the number of subscribers and so on. And then once they approve it, you'll get an email telling you that you have been approved, and then you could just go on now and choose how you wish to earn money. So they have the options. If it is you want them to play ads while the live is going on, which I don't opt for. I can make more money, but I don't do that because I don't want it to be interrupted. They give you the option if it is that you want to create shorts, so you could actually cut clips like people do for my live on TikTok. You could cut clips and they will run ads when those clips are showing. But I don't do all of that. So here. Ole brutal. Oh Lord. Section 34, thank you so much. Ole, don't fight. Parliament is going on recess. Our last session should be on the 3rd of July. and then we go on recess from from the second week in July, and we should come back out anytime after the second week in September. Yeah. Yeah. Reason 424. So don't say they didn't get some benefit from this platform. Okay, I help you out. You don't need to have papers. You don't need dual citizenship. You don't need any of those things. Okay, but I told you where to go. If you go to any other Bank of America, you may not get through. I told you where to go and who to go to, right? Good. Deborah is saying, does he even have a passport? Probably not. Probably don't even know what a passport looks like. Far less for a visa. But at that IQ level, I don't think they might give him a visa at all. But anyway. So KCSS5 is saying I may have to do a half hour on how to get paid on YouTube. I'll do that. Because at the end of the day, it's about uplifting people, right? So the platform is open, it's available. When you get, I think they deduct whatever taxes they have to deduct. But Trinidad and Tobago, we do have a tax treaty with the US. So once you fill out your W-8 form and so on, and with all of your tax details and these different things, so they will know how to tax you accordingly or to avoid double taxation and all of that. Yeah, so maybe one of these days I'll do that. Here we say now, the fool wants to live a life of luxury at your expense. Now, who's the fool? Because you have contributed to me earning money today. Your very presence here, by delaying my life for this long, you have contributed. So you are the real fool. So talking about I want to live the life of luxury at your expense. I will tell you, before I became a parliamentarian, I have a job, and I was making, and I still do make more money in my previous profession, well, my current profession, than I do as a member of parliament. So if you feel like I am living hand to mouth, okay, you couldn't be further from the truth. That's why I could afford to travel so often. All right? What else you want to know about my business? Yeah, exactly. At his expense, he's so dumb. He helping me to make money and coming here to complain about wanting to live a life of luxury at people's expense. I never tell you to watch my life. You choose to do that. If you all come in here every week after week with your insults and all that, well, your attempted insults and so on. That's on you. That's why I do block half all, because the more of you that come on here and look at me, you put in money in my pocket. So look at see what I want. Jenny.
Yes, but from him.
Yes, ma'am.
MP, don't facilitate them people and them with their business and things. They're there for a purpose. They're not there for the truth.
Yes.
They're there for them kind of thing to antagonize people.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let them distract us. We're not falling gaslighting thing. The UNC in its seventh incarnation, because it comes from the DLP. The ideology of the DLP commentary agents has always been about just people of Indian descent. It is in their history. So you have to assume that the UNC following those policies and ideologies.
Yes.
And when you just look at what the Prime Minister would have said, she said beyond the lighthouse port of Spain, there's a country with real people, real ambition, real dreams, and real feelings. And those are the people she's interested in. Who lives within the lighthouse in Port of Spain, Mr.
Correct.
Who lives outside of the confines of the lighthouse, MP Romain? So when you say they are that country, do we have two countries in Trinidad or do we have counties? So we have County Victoria, County St. George. Do we have a country? Two countries in this place? No, we have one country, but she's studying the country where her real people across the lighthouse. And if you look at H.P. Singh book, the biggest races this country produced, and you look at the IRC, and one time was living down across the Refinery Bridge in a separate place they call Hindustan, and after a while they pick up and went Canada. It's the philosophy coming right through when they look at the things that Mrs. Kamala Prasad says, unfortunately, it points to a level of racism. It is there. It is there. It can be, when you look in the book that H.P. Singh writes, right now it's only about 3 copies in this country because they don't replicate that again. You could go to the Heritage Library in Cuba, I think you will get it there. Read that book and you'll understand the philosophy and the mindset, DLP, that is Saga Mirage. No, I ain't give the people wrong if they want to look at the community. But when you want to get into government in a country that is cosmopolitan, you can't just focus on Hindu people or Indian people. And that is what those parties, what those things are historical facts. Nobody making up those things. So whatever they want to say, we can go back to history and show there's a clear sign of racism against certain races in this country when it comes to the UNC. That used to be the DLT, then it was SDLT, then it was UNC, then it was Club 88, then it was ULF, and then it was UNC, and then 50. And they keep going on, but it's the same ideology. Don't study the few people of African descent that is toasting here. That is just for an appeal. But they have no real power in the UNC. They know it's not. But for whatever reason, they like them business. But I'm saying again, don't be distracted by these people who come in to sing praises at the UNC. The UNC has not had any government policy that impacted the lives of all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. The People's National Movement, it has shown that they had the most policies that benefited even people like Kamala Prasad Biswas. And I'll even add this here. When they had free education for all, and then you have to go to school when the schools were built, despite the fact that Bada Saga Mirage would have built some schools and whatever, and then Dr. Williams had to come to put money because the schools were not in hygienic kind of conditions. But the PNM made sure they had education officers that went across to the Refinery Bridge to make sure little Indian girls and little Indian boys were being sent to school and not sent to plant rice and to plant tomato in the garden. That was what the PNM did. The PNM instituted breakfast and lunch in school 3 days a week to make sure that children had something to eat. And you know what is so amazing? They got nutritionists who use the local cuisine. So the bhaji and the pumpkin and the tomato, who was planting those things. So they made ready work for the Indian farmers in this country that they would buy the government would buy the produce from them. And then the nutritionists and the school feeding program will use it into the meals. And let me tell you this thing. When you see it's time for lunch, all the Indian children come into school across the Refinery Bridge because they're able to carry on some food for the mommy and the nanny and the bonky and those things are factual things. KM is not sick, but all of them who talk, they benefited from all the policies, government policies of the People's National Movement. So again, I say, don't take them on. The history is clear and it is there for everyone to see. Have a blessed one again.
Thank you, Jen. And with that, I will take my leave, folks. We will chat again next week, God's willing. Many more living under the poverty line, Mr. Bachelor, than were living under the poverty line when the PNM demitted office in April of last year. I can tell you that. It's like we should say they sended more eloquent butts. Yeah. Tell them, come. The more of you who come on here, come. Just share, like, share, subscribe. All right? Tell the bots to come, man. The more of you all benefiting me. Yeah. I just had to ignore you all in the chat, talk my talk, and only read the comments of those who making sense. But you all come here every weekend to listen to me, or whenever I'm on. Yeah. So if you didn't know, now you know. Thanks for the support. We'll chat again soon, folks. Next week.